Sometimes he found himself thinking that he missed those days, the difficult journey to Tianzhu, and wanted to find Buddhist scriptures. He also missed his comrades who were nearby, and even the crybaby Sam Jan who always said the right words. He kept remembering the white silent horse that had always protected Sam Jan without question. J, who was a charming troublemaker, he also missed him. Saojong was another guy who was always calm, and this really irritated him. And he who was unable to hide his rage bared his sharp teeth at everyone. He walked very slowly with his base feet through the desert thinking about all this. He understood that now all of this was just memories that had become part of drunken conversations at the tavern table. When evening came and they stopped to rest near the fire, Saojong and J fell asleep very quickly, and Sam Jan sat next to him for a while in silence. After which he turned to Wukong and said that their meeting was part of the plan of the great Buddha himself. He also said that the boy did not need to carry the burden of the world on his shoulders, and asked why not share this burden with his teacher. The guy was very surprised that the teacher Sam Jan put his hand on his shoulder and said that the two of them were each other's support, and they are also the closest people and comrades walking the same path. Wukong thought that he was not quite sure that the word comrades was appropriate. So he threw off his hands and shouted that this was nonsense, because he was clearly of a higher rank and would not serve that man as his master. But despite this, there was still a grain of truth in his words. Despite the fact that he offered to admit that he would be his teacher, Wukong answered him that there was no reason. After all, he was not entirely sure that a word from a comrade in this situation was appropriate, because 300 years ago everything happened in the heavenly kingdom. The great sage Sun Wukong, while in the clearing, thought that he could rest a little, but he was informed that Sam Jan's soul had disappeared. He was very indignant and wanted to clarify what all this could mean. He had a bad feeling. The many-armed and many-headed bodhisattva of mercy Avalokitesvara reported that the name Sam Janya had disappeared from the heavenly list, and it also disappeared from the book of life and death of the underworld. The last trace of its soul was found in Anhui province in the human world, and this place was called the Namong clan. Wukong told him not to talk here, that he would have to go down to earth and find him. This was complete nonsense. Wukong said that he worked like a slave for 300 years, and said that he was very tired and therefore could not fulfill this request. Then he was told that it was dangerous to descend to the lower world. Wukong replied that everyone in the heavenly kingdom had heard this, and could the bodhisattva really lie? After all, the monsters of the lower realm have been destroyed, and even the 7 great saints of the world have left. It is unclear who would dare to threaten the heavens at this moment. The bodhisattva replied to the young man that the biggest threat in this situation is people. Wukong was very surprised when she heard that people were the biggest threat to the heavenly world. After 1,000 years of serving as Buddha's errand boy, the bodhisattva most likely lost his mind. Despite this, his interlocutor continued to say that the world had changed a lot since then. And in fact, the Buddha divided the kingdom when descending to the lower world. Most of the heavenly power will be lost. He also continued to tell Wukong not to apply this to himself, since this rule does not apply to him. He thought that Wukong could handle it, so when would most of the powers be sealed in the lower world? Then he will still be able to use demonic energy, and no one will dare to stand in his way. Wukong told him not to make him laugh. Does he really think he is the same as he was before? He wanted to know if he really thought that the move would allow him to be kept on a leash like a damn dog. He didn't agree with that. That's why Wukong tried to attack him by jumping forward and swinging 6 to strike. When he approached, his interlocutor put up a defense in front of him, and the blow did not reach its target. Wukong was very indignant because he believed that it was wrong to treat him like a slave. Then his interlocutor said, "Will he really run away to the ends of the earth again like he did last time?" His interlocutor extended his hand forward, threw him back, and said that he knew everything better than him. Wukong did not expect such a counterattack. He did not have time to react, and was thrown back with all his might. And his interlocutor reminded him that his fate was still in the hands of Buddha, and he had no right to resist. After which he sent many hands towards Wukong, which covered him from all sides like a lotus petal. The bodhisattva then added that according to the orders of Buddha Shakyamuni, he would have to do this. And the great sage ascended to heaven. Sukukun should not collect the will of the Buddha, and it is by his decree that Wukong will be sent to the human world to carry out this task. Wukong really couldn't resist the Buddha's will, so he thought that he didn't want it at all. And then he shouted loudly that he would not do it. When he came to consciousness, he tried to open his eyes. I don't understand where he is. Opening his eyes a little more, he saw a place that was incomprehensible to him. He was surprised. When he opened his eyes wider, he saw that he was in a cell, and in front of him were two people, one of whom said that he thought he could get rich. After he picked up that guy in the mountains, who would have thought that they would get caught by those bastards? The man continued to say that he did not understand why they decided to rob Sok Kamun's warehouse at all. The guy caught himself thinking that they had a very strange aura. The two men turned around and looked at him. One of them said that he had finally woken up. Wukong raised his head up and looked and thought that this couldn't be. He really was sent to the lower world. After which he raised his two hands and saw that they were handcuffed. He did not understand what was happening. But without thinking twice, with one movement he tore the handcuffs and freed his hands. He thought if it came to this, then he had no choice but to carry out Avalokitesvara's order to find the soul of Samjanya as soon as possible. The guys were shocked that he broke the chains, after which Wukong walked up to the wall of Prus and with one movement pushed them apart to get out. The two guys who were with him couldn't believe what they saw, because he pushed the iron bars apart with one movement too. Wukong was then ready to leave this place. He felt some kind of aura behind him. That's why he stopped. He turned his head and looked at the two, trying to determine who was emanating this aura. In fact, he sees through the eyes of flies what is not possible for other people. He saw that very nothing connected him, and one of these men in Buddhism, it is called fate. Another way to say it was that it was a connection between their past lives. This only meant that this person was supposed to be useful to him in this life. That is why Wukong needed to free these men and remove from them, as well as from himself, the chains that bound them. He thought that apparently in order for him to find his lost soul, Avalokitesvara had arranged for him to meet with a guide. Wukong told the two to follow him. He was ready to lead them out of this place. These two thanked him as a great warrior. When they went out into the corridor, they met one guard who did not understand how they could get out at all. Wukong answered him that he does not like to kill in vain, so it is better for him to hide from the evil eye while he asks politely. The guard did not agree. He started shouting that he had no right to speak like that, and that he had to return to the cell alive before he was beaten. Wukong didn't wait until the end to serve him. He took a step forward, and with one movement of his hands threw this guy aside. He did it with such force that the guard flew a great distance and flew out into the street through the walls. People who were near this building at that time stopped and didn't understand what was happening and why there was such an explosion. Everyone wanted to know what it was, so they stood and watched what would happen next, while they saw three silhouettes. The two guys who followed Wukong were talking to each other. One asked the other. He saw it. The other answered that he needed to speak more quietly and investigate behind him. Wukong turned to the bearded man and asked if he knew where the Namong clan was, to which the bearded man replied that of course he knew. After all, it was the greatest sword clan in the whole world, and it was quite famous. Then Wukong ordered him to accompany him then. He himself said that he knew the location of the clan. Seeing the bearded man's reaction, he asked again why he didn't want to go. The bearded man replied that of course, after receiving help, he should accompany him. But before they could finish speaking, they saw that a large number of warriors were approaching them, trying to stop them. Wukong extended his hand and pointed it at one of the crowd and said, "Is he really the boss here?" This man replied that he understood everything correctly. He is the master of the Sokwa clan. Everyone calls him a fierce wolf. His name is Lee Sang-gi, to which Wukong replied that he would take these two with him, and in exchange he would forget that he was thrown into prison. Lee Sang-gi couldn't help but make such a statement. He told the guy that he was acting like a Jade Emperor, and it was unclear who he thought he was. Wukong smiled as always and said, "Is he really interested in who he is? Is he ready to tell him if he asks so much?" After which he raised his head and looked at Lee Sang-gi and said that he was ready to tell him who he was. After which, Wukong raised her hand and began to tell that under the blossoming mountain of fruits beyond the distant sea, a stone monkey was created by heaven and molded. That he is the leader of the golden-haired monkeys, the one who rules the heavens, the greatest sage in the world. After which he repeated once again that he is none other than the great sage and that he is equal to heaven. And then he declared that his name, Sur Ukun Seva, was not understood by those around him, and they began to ask again who he was and whether he was really a great sage. The two guys who were with him couldn't say a word. They were in shock. Wukong at this moment was pleased with how he introduced himself. He believed that everyone would have to worship him. But everything went completely wrong after he said his name, and everyone around him started laughing and pointing fingers at him. Wukong didn't understand why they were behaving like this, because in front of them was a truly great sage. The people in front of him didn't understand why the hell this guy was acting like this. He must have gone crazy. So they sent one of them to deal with this madman. One of the soldiers came up to him, put a sharp sword on his neck, and said that if he didn't want to get it right now, he should go back from where he came. Wukong wasn't going to tolerate such disrespect towards himself. He used his strength to throw this guy as far away as possible. With one movement of his hand, he threw this guard so far away that everyone was a little shocked. Wukong did not stop and directed his power towards the guards who were trying to return him to the cell. These people were so surprised they didn't understand what was happening. There was only fear in their eyes. They also didn't understand where Wukong had gone and how he had managed to move from one place to another. Lee Sang-jae was simply furious. He had not seen such an impudent guy for a long time in his life. So he ordered his men to attack and capture him. He demanded that his men bring him his severed head. Wukong stood calmly watching everything that was happening. He understood that his strength was much greater than all the attackers put together. Wukong said at the last moment that they all made a huge mistake by talking to him. After all, he can tolerate insults towards his loved ones, but he never tolerated insults towards himself. First, he was called a foreigner and then a blonde. One of the warriors approached him and swung his arm trying to attack Wukong. He thought he would succeed. Well, when he tried to strike, he felt that he couldn't do it. Wukong looked at the attacker with his fiery gaze, not understanding if he was really that stupid. After which he decided to act, and in one gene put this whole crowd and without exception in its. Wukong didn't understand why these guys had such a strange aura, because he had never seen such an aura before. And what surprised him even more was that they were becoming faster and stronger right before his eyes. Wukong, after another one of them, came at him with an attack, knocked him out with one move. That's why he decided that he should step aside. He pushed off and jumped away, moving above their heads. When he landed, he thought again that it seemed to him that the aura was very strange. In fact, these were the remnants of demonic energy left in the mortal world over time. This energy was purified by mixing with nature. People involuntarily absorbed it and developed it later. He realized that they call it internal energy. And people are not as boring as he thought until the moment he descended into their world. At that moment, he struck another fighter who tried to attack him. The soldiers stopped. None of them wanted to fight him anymore. That's why he started attacking himself. The attack was so strong that those who attacked him were thrown back to a safe distance to the side. Wukong smiles again and tells them that in front of them is a great sage who ascended to heaven. He repeated his name again. He told them that his name was Sun Wukong. This time, no one laughed. After which, the great sage forged his opponent Nani and struck him several times so that the circle splashed in all directions. He told them that they were no match for him and continued to strike blow after blow. Only at this moment did his opponent realize that Wukong was truly strong and unbearable to destroy. This was precisely because he was incredibly strong, and there was not a single one among them who could resist him. The idiots who were with him in the cell stood with their mouths open and were afraid to say a word. They just watched as Wukong quickly dealt with the crowd that tried to attack him. After which Wukong stopped, turned his head and looked back. Then he turned around and saw that the entire field was littered with the corpses of those who had tried to attack him. Approached one of them, he reached into his inside pocket and said that as moral compensation, he would take all his money. The two guys who were with him thought that he was the best of them, even in stealing. Wukong heard about this and looked at them. He turned his head and saw a wooden box. He opened it and pulled out the contents, after which he took it in his hands and thought that it was really luck that he was able to find it. His opponent started screaming that he was a little bitch and that he had to put it back in place immediately, or he would rip his nasty little hands off. Wukong then looked at him holding this object in his hands and asked if he even knew what it was. Wukong looked at Lee Sang-jae, ordered him to answer, and that he should not dare to tell her to him. He wanted to know where this thing came from. Lee Sang-jae didn't know what to answer him. He got down on his knees and said he wasn't sure. He just knew someone had promised a reward for the item. Wukong asked him again if there was a reward. Then Lee Sang-jae replied that he said that he would pay a fortune to the one who finds this thing. Wukong wanted to know who exactly and where he could find this person. He was told that they were supposed to meet at the Yongguan Hotel, and the name of the person he was looking for was Holch GWI. The bearded man was very surprised when he heard this name. Wukong looked at him and asked if he knew him. He replied that he was an extremely cruel man who had killed dozens of people. And then he added that this man even killed a member of the Namong clan, but he was able to escape punishment. But you still want to go after him unsuccessfully. Kun has this object in his hands. Look at it. I don't understand what's really going on. The only thing he knew was that they needed to go to the Yonghwan Hotel. The guys asked him again because he wanted to go to the Namong clan before that. Wukong told them that instead of going there empty-handed, wouldn't it be better to bring Cheol GWI with them? Maybe then the clan member would give them a warm welcome? And besides, people suffer from such difficult trials that have befallen them. And how could a wise man just sit and watch as villains roam free? These guys looked at him and thought, he must really be the great sage Sun Wukong, damn him. And the most important thing is that they understood that he was incredibly strong and had no equal. So they had no choice but to follow him to that very hotel. When they got to the market square, they noticed that all the people were paying attention to them. The guys started talking among themselves that everyone was looking at them. They felt very awkward. But if they were in their place, then they would also look at them because of the presence of that idiot Wukong stood watching and saying that now that the Yekai have disappeared, life has improved and there are more people. After some time, they were near that very hotel near its entrance. When they entered Turno, a waiter approached them and asked if they were ready to order. Wukong asked him before placing the order if he could tell me if anyone strange had appeared in this place. He wanted to know about the person who came alone or had an unusual aura. But this someone must be strong and powerful. Wukong told the waiter to go to him and tell him that they brought goods from Sequamin and let him pick it up. After which he said that now the waiter can bring them all the food and drinks that this establishment has. After some time, products that were served in this establishment began to appear on the table. There was more and more food every minute. It seemed like they couldn't eat it all. Wukong watched everything that was happening from the side. He was absolutely calm and waited for all the products to be placed on the table. The first thing he decided to try was what was poured into one of the glasses. He really liked this drink and thought that it seemed like fate itself had brought him to this place. He understood that as soon as Sam Jan's soul disappeared into the lower world, a heavenly artifact appeared, and now people are looking for it in this place. If he can figure out where this item came from, then maybe he can find a clue about the lost soul. Wukong looked at the guys who were with him and asked why they were so excited. Were they afraid? The bearded man replied, Helchul GWI is a very scary person. I have terrible things in my ear about him. Many masters of the Murim Alliance died trying to catch him. There were more than a dozen such masters, according to rumors, and this man was declared a common enemy of Murim 5 years ago, but he still hasn't been caught. He killed 5 beggars from Gabang and escaped. The number of civilians he killed is already measured in tens. Wukong laughed and said that it seemed like they only sent weaklings to catch him, and they had heard many stories about this man. The bearded man tried to tell him that this was not so, but their conversation was interrupted by a man who was approaching their table. Wukong and the bearded man turned their heads and looked at the man. When this man approached, he called them idiots who discuss rumors behind their backs and can spill their blood at any moment and lies Zagalov. Wukong took the glass from the table and took a few more sips, showing with his whole appearance that he did not notice this man. It was Helchul GWI, who was a public enemy of the Murim Alliance. When the guys saw him, they thought it was just crazy. And could the rumors really be true? When Kun saw this man, he was even happy. He smiled and looked up at him, after which he turned his head, poured another alcoholic drink into the glass, and told his guest to sit down. Wukong offered him a drink and handed him the same cup of alcohol. The man who came up to the table looked at the impudent guy sitting at the table for some time, after which he said that this was clearly not from the Stoneflower sect. This was evident from his behavior. Wukong raised his eyes and looked at him and said, he doesn't understand what this means if he really isn't from this sect. Helchul GWI then asked him he brought with him the thing he needed. Wukong asked again, he needed a part of the sword. Cheol GWI asked if he would try to bargain with him. Wukong said, what's the point of such a rush? Maybe they should drink a little more to start with, and it would be better if he sat down. Wukong looked at this guy and said that in their past life, they would have definitely been doomed. In this situation, he took out the very thing that this guy was asking about and showed it. The people in that tavern all looked at Wukong, and he asked who ordered him to do this. After all, if he really knew what this object was, then the one who uses him as a puppet would not react like that. He must be very strong. He was wondering who this person was. Then he told him to relax because he looked like a wrinkled fruit. After all, he was just checking him out. It was clear that he was small fry. Chul GWI took these words as insults, so he attacked Wukong and shouted that he most likely wanted to die. Well, imagine the surprise of everyone present when Wukong threw this guy as far away as possible. Everyone in that place froze, watching what happened next, while no one said anything. It is unclear why they decided to fight in such a place. Everyone decided that they needed to leave, as long as no one touched them. Wukong was very indignant and he told them, "Are they serious, and are they people who don't know where their place is? Especially such people always take out a sword instead of talking and then try to attack." That's exactly what happened in this case. Holch GWI took out his sword and began to attack what seemed to him at that moment to be his enemy. The bearded man and his friend watched everything and saw that Wukong was fighting with his bare hands. It was impossible. But she showed them that he had a piece of metal in his hands. They were very surprised because this piece of metal was very short and they had to fight off the blow. They didn't understand if he was really capable of fighting with this and repelling the enemy's attack. Wukong did not understand why he did not have any special form or style in the fight. His opponent acted recklessly, and the most important thing that upset him most was that none of the enemy had wounded him. His opponent was really surprised. He thought maybe he was the supreme master, and in fact he was just teasing him and playing around. Then he realized that he couldn't defeat him so easily, despite the fact that he was constantly attacking him and trying to strike him. At that moment, Holch GWI thought that the only thing he was capable of was to gather all his internal energy and release it in one blow. Wukong was ready to parry any of his blows despite the fact that he tried to attack him with all his might. Wukong looked at him at that moment and said that he knew who he really was. Holch did not stop and swung his arm and tried to strike Wukong again. Then Wukong told him that he really knew who he was and that he was the seven-knotted mountain serpent. At that moment, he grabbed Gavorg and squeezed him so tightly that his opponent could no longer strike with his sword. Holch GWI didn't understand what was happening. It seemed unreal to him. He thought that his opponent wasn't even trying to dodge. He was just ready to take any blow from him. Wukong then said that he thought they had some kind of deep connection, but in reality there was nothing special and he just needed to check it out. After which he grabbed him by the neck with his other hand and gave him a strong blow to the head. In this way he smashed his head and blood splashed in all directions. His opponent was hit, and he could no longer attack because he could no longer move. Wukong didn't feel sorry for him the next moment, but threw him as far away from himself as possible. He did it with such great force that he destroyed the wall of the establishment and threw it out into the street. Wukong then told him if he thinks he is going to die, then he should kneel down and pray to the god he sees in front of him. And then he added that he was too merciful to kill the soul of one praying for mercy. The bearded man said that the bloody iron ghost that even the military alliance couldn't catch for years, and this guy dealt with it so easily. His opponent did not rise to the gum of his tooth to ask for mercy. The only thing he could say was Buddha. It was at this moment that he received another punch to the lower jaw and was thrown even further. Since he didn't ask for anything, Wukong dealt him a few more strong blows so that he definitely couldn't even stand up. And in the end, he delivered one strong blow and threw his opponent as far away from him as possible. Wukong came up and asked if he really had no strength at all. He thought he would last much longer. If he was killing people, he should think about his sins. After which he said if he were to kill Holch GWI again, he would understand what was happening because this guy told him to pray to God. He wondered if this was the end. He actually knelt down in front of him and tried to pray to him. To do this, he folded his two palms and began to pronounce with difficulty, Namu Amida Buddha. Yes, dim he stuck and smiled, said Avalokitesvara, addressing him as God. Wukong couldn't listen to this any longer because he wanted to be addressed as God and not Buddha, so he struck him. His two new acquaintances were once again surprised by what they saw, but this time they said nothing. Wukong responded to this blow by saying that he tried to restrain himself, but he did a very poor job of it. And this bastard who tried to attack him really irritated him because he should pray on his knees and put his whole soul and words into this prayer. After which Wukong said that he needed a drink and asked if there was anything lying around here. The bearded man asked again what was wrong with Bodhisattva Avalokitesvara. At this point, their enemy realized that no one was watching him now and that this was a weak spot. That's why he decided to disappear from this place as quickly as possible so that he wouldn't be killed completely. The bearded man turned to the great warrior to have him look because the enemy was not there. Wukong then said that his opponent was acting like a tough guy, and even when beaten like a garbage rat, he tried to fight. He pulled out one of his hairs, saying that it was not as stupid as it seemed at first glance. Then he blew it off his palm and said that the enemy had run away at the right moment. Then he approached the two guys and said that they could now continue their meal in peace. The bearded man asked again that they would not try to catch him. After some time, a boat was sailing along the river, and in this boat sat that same Chal Wi. As he approached the right place, he thought that if he returned to his master like that, he would not be able to avoid trouble. But he had no choice but to ask Honmato for help, which is why he went to him. A small fringe flew up to his face, bringing that same hair of Wukong. The man sitting in this boat thought that this rude guy's skills were top-notch, and if he combined his forces, then they would be able to defeat him. He sat and burst into tears. He thought that this was a guy and that he was dancing and that he could destroy him. At that moment, Wukong stuck one finger into his ear and began to scratch it. He couldn't do anything about it. His ear was itching a lot. He even told everyone about it. The bearded man approached him and turned to the great warrior. He asked if he really let him go on purpose. Wukong replied that he let him go because of the item he was looking for. The bearded man didn't understand what was so special about it. It looked like an ordinary piece of iron. Wukong replied that even he didn't seem to know what kind of item it was. If someone ordered him to get this thing, he would probably run back to report to his superiors that you were his plan. The bearded man asked why the great warrior was sure that his superiors would not run away. Then he replied that it was just a hunch, and then he added that it would be more accurate to say that he has one trick that he has already used. Then he pulled out one hair and pointed it towards the guy. Wukong added that although he has lost most of his heavenly powers, he still has the ability to use small tricks such as hair magic. And one of his hairs turned into a small mosquito that flew very close to him. And this little mosquito is currently tracking the bloody iron ghost. After which he raised his hand up and said that only he, a great sage equal to the heavens, could have thought of such a thing. The bearded man thought that he was praising himself again. At that moment, Wukong realized that he could read everything from his face and that this guy was cursing him in his head. It seemed he had spent enough time with him to understand. Now, looking at him, he needed to understand who he was in his past life so that it would become clear to him why they had a connection. Kun was looking at the bearded man. He wanted to find out as much as possible what really connected them. The bearded man said that they need to hurry because they won't be the only ones hunting for this ghost. Wukong then answered him that without panicking, he perfectly understands what to do next and can control where he is. He said that even if others try to interfere, no one will stop him except him. At that very time in another part, it seemed that it was absolutely calm. This place was called the greatest sword clan in the sky, or in other words, the Namong clan. The reputation of the Namong clan was unsurpassed. They were at the top of the 5 great clans and were considered the pinnacle of righteous martial arts. But ordinary people did not like them during the Great War between good and evil, and their methods were too cruel. Even the allies in the righteous martial arts world began to fear the Namong clan after this. In one of the rooms of the Namong clan palace, a girl sat looking at herself in the mirror in front of her. She combed her hair very slowly and was thinking about something all the time. There was no smile on her face. She thought that something needed to be changed, because things couldn't go on like this. It was the master of the Namong clan's law enforcement hall, and this girl's name was Manhwa. After she combed her hair with the comb, she placed it in front of her and said that they shouldn't just swing their swords left and right. As Wudang and Shaolin do, they need to be kind, fair, and sometimes even merciful to their enemies. But their masters consider all this hypocrisy, and it tormented her very much and did not give her any peace. She understood that something very important would soon happen, not only for her clan, but also for the rest. She understood that the Namong clan and another one to you, Huangbo, who are also like her clan. And also Jagal will come to you together with the Sichuan Tang clan, and another clan, Hebei Peng, will join them. The young heirs of the 5 great clans will gather in this place in the Namong clan to meet the dragon and the phoenix. She was thinking about it, and at the same time she was putting on her clothes, tidying herself up. I tie my hair on my head. She thought that before that moment, somehow it would happen they should make a different impression. After which she left her room and walked along the long corridor. Walking along the long corridor, she kept thinking only about this event. Her maid stopped her and said that the master had urgently called all the masters to him. The girl turned her head and looked at her. When she heard that it was an emergency call, she immediately thought about what had happened. After some time, she stood with the other masters, waiting for what they had all been gathered for. After some time, the head of the Namong clan came out to them to make a statement. This man was the head of the Namong clan. His name was Namgung Jinbek, and he had something to say. As soon as he came out, he immediately said that he had called some of them because there was an urgent matter due to the Myong Hall. because right at that moment, a bloody ghost appeared in Anhui province. He also said that they don't understand what kind of clan they are if they are threatened by some sect, and weren't they the first to rise up and start the battle? He also said that they should do this not for themselves, but for the protection of their family and their children. Immediately after these words, he said that now, right under their noses, there appeared an enemy who killed their loved ones. He also added that they should personally track him down, after which he said that they should look at the scrolls that were given to them. Each of them must go to the indicated places and find a bloody ghost in iron armor. He must be captured by any means, after which the head of the clan looked at his masters and asked them again if they understood. The masters answered him in one voice that they understood everything, sir, and were ready to move. After which, in one moment, each in their own direction, they began to move from this place. The head of the clan, as befits him, was at the head of this entire movement. He was ready to personally enter into a fold with his enemy. The girl watched everything that was happening from the side. She understood that this was their chance. She also thought that if they caught the ghost and announced it publicly, not only would people look at them differently, their power would be strengthened. Each of them believed that no one could stop their clan when they were so close to completing the task. Wukong stood and watched everything that was happening. He had to figure out what to do next. Holch GWI was on the boat and was thinking about how he could get revenge on that guy. We were just thinking that we didn't even have time to notice that very close to him, there was another boat with two men. When these two saw his boat, they tensed up because they understood that it could be the same ghost they were hunting for. It was Namgung Seo and Namgung Jae. Both of them were from the Namgung family and were very close to their target. One of them thought that it was most likely a blood ghost and they finally found it, so they had to inform the chief and elders but first catch it. Lead, if they fire a flare, then this bastard could escape, and the master of the Law and Order Hall ordered to capture him alive. He wants to hand him over to the court of the Union of Marim. They understood that if their enemy began to resist, they had to kill him. That was the order. Each of them understood that they were not afraid at all. They were much more afraid of being disgraced, especially for the representatives of their Namgung family, to which they both belonged. One of the guys turned his head, saw something, and asked what it was, and he was very surprised. The boat they were in suddenly had a hole, and water began to fill the entire boat. One of the guys wondered what it was and where it all came from. Maybe he was shouting too loudly and someone could see him. The ghost who was on the other boat turned his head and saw two guys from the Namgung family. He looked at those guys, and at how one of them had his sword bandaged. Everything was clear to him. That the blue scabbard with a white knot was only for the Namgung clan. It is unclear how they ended up in this place. Two guys were upset because they had a story about a rowdy guy in a boat, because the ghost that was very close ran away. They understood that the boat would not have been damaged without a strong blow, and it is unclear how it is possible that someone left this hole with the help of energy. In this case, they thought that the ghost had subordinates, and they most likely discovered them. They thought about what to do until the bloody ghost escaped. The members of their clan gradually narrowed the encirclement ring. Sooner or later, he would be trapped. If he could catch at least the subordinates of the bloody ghost, that would be enough. One of them thought that this was how they would take responsibility for the mistake they had made. That's why they decided that they had to act and they couldn't stand aside. It would be a shame. When the ghost saw people from the Namgung clan, she thought that he had just gotten rid of this idiot, and immediately people from the clan appeared who were pursuing him. Even among the no rumors go that the bloody demon clan is the most cruel. They are large relatives of the Namgung family, especially these rumors about the head of the clan, and they said that he rips apart cells with his bare hands and crushes hearts with his feet while they drink without stopping and laugh like crazy. The ghost suddenly turned his head and saw another boat. He was very surprised, so he turned and looked in that direction. He couldn't even imagine that. Since there was another boat and a man on it, does the ghost enjoy a walk on the water? The ghost was in shock. He didn't even know how to react, because this couldn't happen in principle. He didn't understand how this could happen, because he was running from this guy, and he was in front of him again. On another freak, a man reached out and grabbed another man by the hand and pulled him onto the boat. Then he pulled out, he said that this man is a minion of the bloody ghost. They wanted to know where he was going. The man lying at the bottom of the boat was coughing and trying to cover the wound with the hand that was on his arm. Then these two from the Namgun clan lowered their eyes down and looked at the boat, or said that there was something below. They tried to take a closer look and see what was there, But they didn't succeed because the very next moment their boat was torn into small pieces and scattered in different directions. Two brothers from the Namgung clan were trying to get back to the boat they were sailing on, or what was left of it. One of the boys told his brother that he was glad to see him and that he saved him. The brother got angry and told him that he would go alone. And why did he follow him? He is just an idiot. Well, his brother didn't think so. He cried and said that it was very painful for him. He was bleeding. The bearded man came up to him, bandaged his hand, and said that he could bleed so that he wouldn't move and lay silently. After which the enemy turned his head and said that he would also take on these guys. Since they were very close and one of the Namgung family prepared a soto to start attacking them. One of the brothers tried to hit the enemy and the second guy to destroy them. But when he did this, he realized that he had failed and these two disappeared from his sight. It was very strange for him to realize that this guy had returned from his attack and he couldn't do anything. And it was also strange to him that he did not feel his presence anywhere at all. And also, Maraid thought that the movement in the water was quite strange. So they decided to wait, because this guy would sooner or later be forced to swim to the surface to breathe air. In fact, they understood perfectly well that the root of internal energies is in breathing. Since this is the main way of its accumulation, in other words, using internal energy requires breathing. And as soon as he comes to the surface, it will be the perfect moment to catch him. One of them very quickly opened to the side in order to actually swim and breathe. He was also thinking that his brother Baise was very badly injured and he needed to do something. And he also understood that all this happened because of these bastards who were hunting them from above. Meanwhile, Wukong, where you are on the stern of the boat, not very calmly swam to the same place where the ghost was. The beard thought that the fog did not allow one to see even ahead. Not a single boat would go out in such thick fog. To look for the bloody ghost's boat in such a place was simply madness at that moment. But he didn't say anything. And most importantly, he understood that this guy had succeeded and was able to find the ghost in such a thick fog. Wukong looked ahead and said that he saw another smile and he was very curious who it could be. The bearded man looked ahead. He was also interested in who was on that boat. When they swam a little closer, they saw not just one boat, but two of them. And this surprised them even more. The bearded man thought that this guy was really right. And he, strangely enough, had a tolma. Otherwise, it is impossible to say. He not only found a ghost, but also other boats in such a fog. When Kun saw another vodka, he said that there should be much more of them, but there were only a couple of boats. One of the guys noticed that they were all wearing blue ones with white ties. This was the distinctive mark of the Namgung clan. Wukong then said that it seemed that fate really did connect people in unusual ways, and as soon as they broke away from that strange guy, they immediately ran into the Namgung clan. Now it was clear that this clone was also hunting for the ghost. Wukong said that since they were heading to Namgung anyway, helping them would be beneficial for them in the future. After which the young man said that it was necessary to sink the boat. The bearded man asked if the ghost was really in the vodka. Wukong looked at him and said that of course not. He meant the boat of the second from the Namgung clan. The bearded man was indignant and said, why should he do this even at that moment when the clan members were almost in the apartment of their enemy looking in? Wukong told him not to worry. He would catch him himself and settle any possible misunderstandings, because he couldn't take them away as prey straight from the tray. That can also become their sworn enemy. You need to buy time. He will interrogate the bloody ghost and find out who is behind him. When Holch GWI saw the guy in front of him, he was so scared that he didn't know how to react. Wukong swam closer to him and asked him again if he was really enjoying the walk on the water, after which he looked at the bloody ghost with his fiery gaze and asked if he was a viper. Then he added whether he wanted to talk to him, and if so, he was very sorry. Wukong looked at him and continued to talk about how he thought they were quite close. At that moment, the bloody ghost grabbed the man by the hair who was on that boat. Then he put a sword to his throat and told him to get out of this place, and he began to cut the old man's throat. In such a case, you always need to be on guard. Wukong replied to his opponent that they were using the hostages for their own benefit, and that was why he was a coward. His opponent understood that in front of him was a master who was not subject to his control. That's why the bloody ghost started screaming from the spot, and one wrong move and the blood of the long man will spill right in this place. Eric was not ready to die. Tears were streaming from his eyes. He asked to be spared. Wukong understood that this was a situation where his opponent could actually kill an innocent person, but he calmly answered him, Is it really his problem? The bloody ghost was very surprised. Then Wukong added that whether the old man dies or not is not his concern. After all, if he dies, then this is his fate in the Book of Life and Death. In this incident, they would have written something like this: Old man so-and-so died being held hostage by a vile viper. Then they wrote the month, day, and time. All this says that this old man has such a fate. Born in this world, the bloody ghost could not escape his fate. He understood that his opponent did not care about these old men at all. He thought that the hostage-taking tactic would not be easy for him. But this was not the reaction he expected. He thought that a representative from the righteous sect was chasing him, wanting to catch him. But at that moment he realized that all these sects are in no way connected with this blonde guy, and who he is unclear. Wukong immediately lowered his head after these words, and then said to his opponent, "Something here he should know. He can't stand this book." After these words, he pushed off from the boat on which he stood in order to attack his opponent. At that moment, the enemy realized that this could be the end for him. He was very scared. Wukong knocked the sword out of his opponent's hands with one movement and pushed him back. Holch GWI didn't understand how it all happened this time either. It was all very fast. He couldn't stay on his feet. As he fell, he only saw Wukong, who landed on his deck and felt a strong pain in his shoulder. Wukong stood on the deck and looked at what was happening overboard. And this boat. He said that he died only because it was written in some book and it seemed too unfair. Then he added that he erased all the names from the book and turned to the old man to listen to him. Instead of what he said earlier in the book, it is written that he was ready to tell him about it. The old man continued to cry, not understanding whether he could really survive in this situation or whether he would be killed. Wukong told the old man that he would live to be 100 years old and peacefully leave his life surrounded by his family and loved ones, after which he extended his hand to him and asked him if he agreed. Two members of the Namong family stood on the wreckage of their boat and looked into the water. One of them thought that air was needed to use internal energy, and that it was at the moment when his opponent was swimming that he would strike there. His second brother came up and shouted to him that the enemy was near him and they needed to destroy him, after which he said that they needed to cut the water with the ball, and only then would they be able to attack from behind. One of the brothers thought that this was some kind of amateur skill and they were doing something wrong. At that moment, a huge man with fiery eyes appeared from the water, who was several times larger than him. This man immediately covered the mouth of one of the brothers so that he would not scream and took him under the water. His brother turned around when he saw that his brother was gone and started calling him, "I don't understand what happened." His brother doesn't understand anything. He only wanted to know one thing. Where is his brother and where did he go? At the same time, on the boat where the bloody ghost was, the whole boat was covered in the ghost's blood. Wukong looked at him as he writhes in pain because one of his hands was cut off, the one he wanted to kill the old man with. The ghost thought instead of killing him with one swing of the ball, the little brat ripped his arm off. There was a large distance between them, but he covered it in a second, and it seemed to him that his palms were not even gripping the handle of the weapon. The bloody ghost raised his head and looked at his opponent and saw that his hand was covered in his blood. Wukong looked at his hand, and the fact that it was all covered in blood even upset him a little. He thought that if there were unbelieving cabbage rolls in his circle, he needed to leave them on the true path. He tried to explain that it was precisely because God himself had given him what he already had. Namely, Sambur gave him the title of a fighting and victorious Buddha, so he could not lose. He knew that if he ever met the GOP Suk of his life who he should not pass by, he believed that it was his duty to change the thinking of these deep-seated people and set them on the right path. But he understood perfectly well that everything he had said and done before did not concern this situation. And he could use all this, but not this time. He was not ready to forgive this bloody ghost for his actions. He knew perfectly well that the low reserve says no killings, only peaceful solutions. But he couldn't help himself, so he grabbed that right ghost by the throat and lifted him up. A little more and he would have pressed harder so that his opponent would not have enough air. Bodot said that the bloody ghost is also called the bloody ghost in iron armor. He is a terrible person who killed even civilians. And this could be seen when he took that same old man hostage and put a sword to his throat. It had been a long time since he had last felt such a strong desire to kill someone, and he knew he was being thrown down the path of suffering. At that moment, he decided that in this case, he would do as he pleased. For some time, holding your opponent by the throat, he thought about what to do with him next. But later, he threw it to the bottom of the boat. He understood that he had nowhere to run in this case. And he also understood that there were no murders in the West. The solution to the cake was peaceful. Wukong. I turned to Bodhisattva. Avalokitesvara told him that he will take away some nonsense. He understood that he could not solve everything only peacefully through help and negotiations. Well, he also believed that at the moment he was not fighting, and he was not a slanderous Muda, but a great sage equal to the heavens who once shook the entire heavenly kingdom. He understood that he had to be exactly such a great sage who truly had no equal. After all, souls burdened with many evil deeds are sent either to hell or fall into an endless circle of reincarnation, atoning for their sins. They live in the form of insignificant creatures, perhaps even insects, and only if they show signs of repentance can they be healthy for a new birth in human form. The fate of each is decided at the posthumous trial. This is what the rebirth of a monster with a soul full of malice leads to in a person. He continues to decompose and destroy the world with his presence. Even hell is too merciful a punishment for such a person. In the name of the great sage of heaven, Sun Wukong, he extended his hand forward. And then he grabbed Newell with one finger and ordered him to disappear from this life forever. For some time, one could observe how he carried out the task that his opponent should disappear. Namely, it should boil into small pieces and dissolve in the air so that no one can see it. Previously, when he did this, there were always those who dared to stand in his way. But now he thought that there were no more Melchikovs left to go and no one could stand in his way. And the most important thing is that the self-proclaimed messengers of the afterlife, who could not resist him, he ordered them to tell their master, King Yama, that the snake was no more. Sun Wukong figured it out. He looked at them and said, "Why didn't they leave them here without any work? Then it's better if they get lost." The two messengers of the afterlife did not object to him, and at one point they decided to get out of his sight as quickly as possible. As soon as they were gone, Wukong felt a terrible pain. He began to cough and covered his mouth with his hand. After he cleared his throat, he looked at his hand and saw that it was covered in blood. He was told from above that the Tathagata had long demarcated the worlds. Tathagata is one of the titles of the Buddha that the historical Buddha most often used when speaking about himself. He who descends into the mortal world loses almost all of his divine power, and he felt how limited his powers were. The pain was as if his whole body was being torn apart, and chills and goosebumps ran across his skin. He hadn't felt anything like this for a long time. Well, at that moment, he noticed something overboard and turned his head to understand what was there. Suddenly, he saw a hand sticking out of the water. He just needed to figure out whose hand it was. One of the brothers of the Namong family saw his second brother in the water and asked so if he was okay. His brother replied that this bastard moves very fast in the water. That's why he couldn't catch him. His brother thought about it for the second time and decided that they say that water creatures fight exactly like that. Even a martial arts master who finds himself underwater and suffocating will not be able to reveal his full potential. One of the brothers said that in this situation, it will not be so easy for them to fight with those in the water. At that moment, they heard someone's voice and turned around to understand who else was in that place. It was Wukong who said that it was time to stop this senseless battle. Under his foot lay a bloody ghost. Wukong stood like a winner. He placed his foot on the dead body of the bloody ghost he had destroyed. One of the brothers took the liberty of asking who he was and why he was in this place. And the most interesting thing he wanted to ask was how he was able to destroy the bloody ghost. Wukong looked at these two guys, said that it looks like they also had a grudge against this guy who will no longer be able to tell them anything. The bearded man surfaced a little to take a breath, then wondered if he had really killed him. Wukong replied that they had a personal score to settle. One of the Namong brothers said that when he saw a photo of him next to him, he thought that he was going out with him, that he was on the side of those who were now underwater. Wukong answered him that this guy couldn't act like a brother. Turning to the bearded man, he said that he should also stop. One of the brothers of the Namong family could not believe that this guy really could not kill the bloody ghost. He looked at him without taking his eyes off him. This was the blood enemy they had been looking for so long. He thought that this guy eliminated the bloody ghost so quietly that they are not even noticeable, so you need to be careful with him. Kun shouted at the bearded man to come out, to which he replied that he couldn't, because they had wounded his brother. And turning to the great master, he told him not to interfere in this matter. Wukong thought if his brother got hurt because of him, does he really want him to stay out of it? He shouted at him not to worry about his friend. He would personally make sure he fully recovered. The bearded man shouted that he couldn't just stand aside if he retreated at this moment, who wouldn't be able to look his brother in the eye. At that moment, Kun thought that he was a robber who only talks about loyalty. Like in his past life, nothing has changed at all. At that moment, memories came into his head, and he understood why they were connected. These events took place 300 years ago on the Liusha River. When they were all together, one of them said, was he really going to just stand and watch? Jubai then answered who they take him for, because he is the former Grand Marshal of the Heavenly River Fleet, unlike his brother, the wise Monkey King. Yes, before he only went to clean up after the horses, and so what? That's why they fought then. Then they were reminded that enough info Rizzo, if it weren't for Bai Jie, they wouldn't have been able to tame the Liusha River monster. At that moment, he remembered his eyes and understood how he knew him so well. At that moment, Kun was looking at the opposite side of the dacha and said that he had already told him that she was happy. He knew very well that he usually didn't care about nasty things, but he decided to address him as Wu Qing. He looked at the bearded man and saw who was standing behind him and understood why they were brought together. The bearded man raised his head and looked at the great master. He also wanted to remember everything. Wukong continued to look at the bearded man, realizing that this was the same man as 300 years ago. The bearded man then asked how he knew his Buddhist name given to him in the Shaolin monastery. Wukong answered him that he understood your fighting style. The bearded man asked the guy what he meant, to which he replied that he knew him in his past life. He was just a fool, after which he extended his hand to him and, feeling very sorry for her, told him to get out of the water already. At that moment, the bearded man didn't understand what the hell was going on, but it seemed to him that this guy wasn't lying at all. After he got out, the bearded man asked again how he knew. Then the great master answered that he knew for sure that they had known each other in his past life. Now it was unclear how he could forget his name, because from the very beginning he completely forgot that he had such a companion, and the fact that he spent a lot of time with him on that very journey, and also that he loved to play with him, because he was his companion on that long and difficult journey. Wukong also tried to play with him this time, to which the bearded man told him to promise that he would sort everything out. Despite the very thick fog, they all got into one boat and began to move towards the shore. The old man who was rescued rowed as hard as he could to get to the boat as quickly as possible. Wukong asked the bearded man why he didn't just get off because he was a good swimmer, and he could mushrooms for something. He answered, was he really just a fish? The bearded man said that it couldn't be. Even when he was a student at the Shaolin school, a lot of girls were interested in him, and he almost broke his vows. Wukong turned around and looked at him and asked if they really loved him and who the women were. Then the bearded man answered that it was all because he was handsome. Wukong told him that no one in Grunya liked Cheek. All this was observed by two brothers from the Namong family sitting opposite. Wukong continued to talk about how something was wrong with him and that he needed to see a doctor. Unexpectedly for them, the young man lowered his head and said that, by the way. Then he raised his head, looked at the two brothers and asked if they had found out what they wanted, because it was hard not to notice if they had learned anything new. One of the brothers tried to answer him, but Wukong interrupted him and said that he was not his enemy at all. One of the brothers asked for forgiveness. He was ashamed to admit it, but the Namong clan has many enemies, so they must be on guard. Wukong then looked at the bearded man, hit him with his elbow, and said that although it was a misunderstanding, their youngest had attacked him, and he hoped that they no longer held a grudge against them. Besides, he had long admired the Namong clan, so now that fate had brought them together, couldn't they allow him to visit the clan? One of the brothers told the other that letting a person in personally from whom they do not know was not the best idea, but he killed their enemy, the bloody ghost. Despite this, they need to be careful. Wukong looked at the two brothers and asked them again if they doubted him. One of the brothers thought that this guy was talking as if he was eavesdropping on their entire conversation, so he had no choice but to apologize and say yes. Then he added, maybe he doesn't know everything about the martial arts world, but he's never heard of it. Wukong told him that he understands, and in that case, he'd better introduce himself. These two brothers looked at Wukong, waiting to find out who this gentleman was. Was he really the great rock that was split by lightning? Wukong continued to tell her story after she was uninhibited, and a beautiful primate emerged from her with magnificent fur cutting through the heavens and the earth. Born from heaven and forged by the earth, his name is the great sage equal to heaven's son Wukong, and it was he who everyone thought he was crazy. Already a few days later in the Namong clan, when they arrived at the place, Wukong approached the entrance gate and asked the bearded man if this was the same Namong clan. The two brothers came to the gate and began to tell the master that this guy claimed to be a great sage and that Avalokitesvara had sent him to the mortal world. But on the other hand, this guy helped kill the bloody ghost, and the master said he thought he should let him in. The only thing that was clear was that he was not just a harmless madman, and if he suddenly started to act up, they would have to deal with him. Then they decided that it would be better if the clan leader spoke to him personally. The girl came closer to Bu and said that welcome to the Namgung clan. Her name was Manhwa. After she introduced herself, she also said that she was the head of the disciplinary hall. Wukong looked at her at that moment and realized that he had already seen her in his past life. He was pleased to see her again, and he was very surprised by it. And he was also wondering if all this could happen again in his life, and the thread of fate would intervene again. He felt that the thread of fate was going to this person, which meant that he was somehow connected to her. He couldn't take his eyes off her. He kept looking down at her. The girl also looked up at him and did not understand what was happening at that moment. After which, she was the first to gain mercy and turned to the warrior master Wukong, who told her that he was glad to meet her and that she could simply call him son. He also added that it was a great honor for him to be accepted as a guest in the Namgung clan, and he was very happy to be here. Wukong told her that by the will of fate, he was even able to personally catch Namgung's enemy, the bloody ghost in iron armor, and he hoped that his body would be a worthy gift. The girl replied that the clan leader should return tomorrow, and she was sure he would be very pleased, although he might be a little disappointed since he couldn't catch him personally. After some time, they were taken to a house where they could rest until the next day. The bearded man answered Wukong that he was very grateful to him for healing his brother early. He wanted to know how he did it because they were very deep. Wukong replied that when you spend all your time with a whiner who cries because of one scratch, unconsciously beginning to cope better even with serious wounds, the bearded man wanted to know who the whiner was. They answered that it was Sam Jan, after which the bearded man asked the great master if he really liked that girl. Wukong answered him what he was talking about, but he obviously caught him off guard and the master didn't know what to answer him. Then the bearded man said that it was just strange because he was looking at her so intently and smiling. And most importantly, he spoke to her very tenderly. It seemed that he really wanted to please her. The bearded man said that if a man wags his tail like a dog, he will definitely not be respected. Wukong interrupted him and said that he had already said that he needed to find someone in this place. The bearded man then asked the master again, so he was looking for the head of the disciplinary hall. Wukong answered him that he didn't know yet. Of course, he thought that if that girl was Sam Jan, after all, during reincarnation a person's gender can change, but the soul is much more important. At that moment, the bearded man suddenly fell silent, lowered his eyes, and seemed to be thinking about something. After which he raised his head and said that he wanted to ask about something, because now that they had arrived at the Namgung clan, his task is completed and tomorrow morning he can return back to Mount Kaon. Wukong didn't expect him to start talking about it so quickly. He turned his head and looked at him. He didn't want to say goodbye to his old friend at all. He wanted to stay with him as long as possible. To do this, he decided that before they said goodbye, they needed to celebrate properly and they needed to drink. They sat in the gazebo for a long time together, talking about the past and about this life. Each of them had something to tell, but mostly the bearded man talked about how he lives. He talked about how he was born and raised in a fishing village and had some kind of special connection with water. Then he met a strange master who taught him martial arts, the true art of water transformation chi. The most important thing is that you there. Baev art, even breathing, does not need to be controlled because usually martial arts use internal energy through breathing to improve strength. That's why Kun asked him how he did it, but he said it was a secret. Then he also told me that his village and his wife were bandits, and somehow it turned out that he was drawn into the war. Between the righteous and demonic forces, he wandered into Shaolin. He took a sip and thought he couldn't believe what he had just told him all this. It was clear that alcohol loosens the tongue, which is why he was able to tell him all this. The bearded man thought that this guy was a little rude at their first meeting, but despite this, he still helped him. And now he is sure that no matter what he wants to be with him, help and protect, and follow him to any point in the world. And his words about leaving were probably his own fault, so he brought another jug into the hall and asked Wukong to pour him another mug. After some time, almost 5 jugs had been drunk, but they continued to talk to each other. It was this alcohol that allowed them to get quite close to each other. Bodat asked the great warrior where he was from. He replied that he was from Mount Huaguo, to which Baroda said maybe he was telling the truth. Wukong repeated to him once again that he really was from that very mountain, and that he was not making anything up at all. Then the bearded man thought that despite the amount of alcohol they had drunk, they continued to keep their distance. At some point, he even thought that in his opinion, he really deserved to know the truth. Wukong answered him that he never lies and he really comes from this place. The bearded man insisted on his own. He stood up and said that, no, this is a guy. He just doesn't want to open up to him. That is why the bearded man turned away in order to leave, because his interlocutor did not tell him the truth. He stood up and told him to let him take his leave, and decided to say goodbye to him, deciding that the evening was already over. Wukong didn't stop him and said that it was okay, but he understood that the bearded man still didn't believe him. The bearded man turned around and left, leaving the great warrior to sit alone in this gazebo. Wukong suddenly said after him that the bearded man should take these words very seriously. He stopped, then turned his head and asked again what he had just said. But the young man didn't repeat anything to him. He just sat and looked at him. Wukong then tried to explain to him that the bloody ghost was dead, and his followers would look for the killer since he was in Namgung's plan. They wouldn't go to that place. Instead, they could target whoever was next to him, which meant they could attack him. The bearded man then closed his eyes and through his resentment said that they could have breakfast together tomorrow. And then he added that until it was safe, he was ready to be with him no matter what. Only after these words, the bearded man turned around and began to leave, because Wukong had achieved what he wanted. A smile appeared on his face. He understood that he had done everything right and everything had worked out for him. The only thing he said was that he knew it, and he smiled as usual. The next day, in the main hall of the Namong clan, the head of the clan saw them and said, "Welcome," and there are those same guests. Wukong stood in front of a large number of elders and the head of the Namong clan himself. The man standing in the middle said that he was the head of the Namong clan and he was glad to welcome him. He also said that his name is Namgung Jin Baek and he's really happy to have guests. Kun was very surprised. In front of him stood a huge man who had to be looked up at. The head of the clan looked at the gentleman. "I don't understand what happened to him and why he froze." Wukong answered him that he was very glad to see him. Everyone present did not understand why he froze, although in front of the head of the clan, everyone would behave in this way. Wukong was thinking about something completely different. He thought that he was entangled between him and this girl. There was a thread of fate connecting them. Well, what he felt when he saw the head of the clan confused him, because in this person, this thread of fate was also present, and they also had a common past. Wukong clearly felt this thread of fate that led from him to the head of the clan. He remembered the words that the last trace of Samjan's soul had transferred him to Anhui province. Namely, he was then told that this trail led to the Namgun clan. It was necessary to understand who exactly. Namely, which of the two of them is the very person that he will need. Namely, which of them is that very Samjan whom he was looking for. Wukong, after being introduced to the head of the Namgung sect and all the other elders, left the meeting. As he left the room, he had no intention of turning around and looking away, but he could hear what they were trying to say about him. Everyone wanted to know what others thought about this guy. The head of the sect wanted to know the opinion of absolutely all the elders of their clan about this guy. One of the elders said that it was difficult for him to say honestly. The second supported him and said that it was difficult to draw any conclusions. Another one noticed whether he did it consciously or not, but this guy only briefly expressed his position. Another one noticed that he admired their plan. One of the elders noted that this guy seemed to him a little arrogant, but rather not rude, but simply a person who does not observe formalities. Well, they all agreed that they knew absolutely nothing about him. They didn't know what sect he was from, who his teacher was, what martial arts he studied, and where he fought. The master noted that for a man who supposedly defeated a bloody ghost, there were too many inconsistencies. And the main thing she noticed was that she didn't feel the aura of a martial arts master from him. Another elder said that he had the same impression. He also did not feel this aura. Another elder said, "Is it so important for everyone that someone did not feel the aura of a martial arts master?" One of Namgung's brothers said that he noticed when he was accompanying him that he was either an incredibly skilled master or had mastered a rare technique that concealed internal energy. The head of the sect, lowering his head, said that honestly, he did not feel the slightest trace of inner strength from this guy. After these words, everyone froze and looked at him. It was necessary to understand what decision the head of the sect would make. One of the elders then asked what they should do in this situation because it was a problem. The head of the sect thought for a moment and said that he had already made a decision and was ready to announce it. The sect elders and martial artists fell silent, turned their heads and looked at the sect leader. Then the clan leader adjusted his beard and said that they would allow Mr. Sun Wukong to stay in their clan as their guest. This was the most correct decision that the head of the Namgung clan could have made in relation to this guy. Now all he had to do was complete the tasks that were set before him, which is why he appeared in this clan. He had two goals. The first was to find the spirit of Sam Jan among the member of the Namgun clan, and there was also a second task. He needed to track down those who were hunting him. He had no doubt that these two were connected to each other, since the clan's enemies were also hunting the spirit. They should have shown themselves first, but the real problem is finding the soul, and he still doesn't know which of them is the carrier. But the most amazing thing is the strength that people possessed and their internal energy. When he first saw the clan leader, he realized that their internal energy was as strong as the demonic power of the great yokai. He understood that it was practically unrealistic, and he wondered if people could really reach such a high level. At that moment, having compared all his observations, he thought that they were similar and that he would have to take this matter seriously. He also understood that in this situation he would have to test his abilities that he had left on Earth. Night in the Namgun clan, when it was already completely dark everywhere, only in one house the light was on. They brought a large number of documents to the girl's desk and said that she had to review them all. The woman who brought her the documents said that she was working late again. The girl replied that no one could help her. Immediately after these words, the woman left the room and the girl closed her eyes and dozed off. She thought that since the war between the righteous and demonic forces began, and their ranks were noticeably divided, in addition to her usual work, she had to perform tasks that other people did. Besides, with so many enemies who hold a grudge against their clan, no one knows what might happen next. After she had finished her work, she put the brush on the table. She sat at her desk for a while, continuing to think about what was happening. At some point, she realized that this is why he is called a truly great leader. After such a decision as the head of the clan made in relation to this guy, no one doubted it anymore. The elders said that they would accept the master as their guest. The head of the clan said that however they must do this under certain conditions, everyone wanted to know what these conditions were. Then he said that they would ask for his cooperation in matters in which the Namgung clan cannot directly interfere. This means that they were ready to ask him to solve problems related to their enemies. This plan had 3 advantages. The first is because the Namgung clan will not be directly involved, and their enemies will not be able to respond to them openly. Secondly, if Mr. Song refuses their request, they will simply receive him well and let him go. At 3, if he agrees, it will mean that he has his own specific goals, and he came to the clan for a reason. His fighting abilities will definitely be revealed during this time, and at the same time, they will learn more about his personality. The elders agreed that this was a brilliant plan. After the head of the clan told about his plans, he said that this meeting was over. The girl thought that he always made bold decisions, but his instincts that he followed were incomprehensible to her. But they were truly worthy only of the leader of the Namgung clan. Then the next morning came, and with the sunrise, Wukong decided that he also needed to act. He decided to approach the palace to observe, but there was no one there yet. He was standing right in front of the entrance, looking at his hands. He thought that his physical abilities had not weakened much even on Earth. His fiery eyes and golden vision, the ability to see beyond illusions and share the truth, copperhead iron lop body impervious to swords and spears. His fiery eyes and golden vision seemed to have deteriorated greatly, and now he could only see the thread of fate and weakly perceive the aura of people. From this thought alone, he understood that his abilities were not the same as before, and he was much weaker. He thought that the most important thing he should check was his demonic power and energy. When he started doing this, he realized that he was not like everyone else. He was special, and a large number of heavenly powers were sealed within him. And he also remembered the words that they told him that he could still use the energy of the Ikai in the mortal world. At the moment when he abandoned his demonic power and took a place in the heavenly realm, he abandoned it from the energy of yokai. Since he descended into the mortal world, she had slowly begun to recover, and now he understood Bodhisattva why she had sent him to this place. If he has to fight with people who possess the energy of the great Ikai, then they will have to master the power of the great sage equal to heaven, Sun Wukong. And this is a test that he arranged for himself. He needed to understand what he was capable of, and how big are his forces so that he understands what kind of enemy he can fight with. And he also needed all this in order to understand how to proceed further. When he finished this check, he stood for a while, lowering his head, collecting his thoughts. At that moment, he understood that everything was possible, and he would be able to complete the task set before him. He clenched his fist and told himself that he knew for sure that he could handle this matter. The only thing that upset him a little was that his abilities became a little weaker in this mortal world. But despite this, he was not going to give up. He understood that he could cope with the task. After all, the energy of Ekaev does not belong to the heavenly world. The power of spirits originally belonged only to the lower world. It was the energy that filled the world of spirits. Where do people get their internal energy from? Over time, the energy of Ekaev that remained in the world of people was purified and mixed by nature, and people began to absorb it in order to develop their strength. People purified this energy that penetrated into nature after they called this force internal energy. He stood there for a long time looking at his hand. And at that moment, it became clear to him that human martial arts were ultimately based on the energy of yokai. And now he just realized that all the fighting techniques that were in this world were created using this energy. At that moment, he concluded that with his powers, all this was possible. Martial arts were created just for him. He clenched his fist sharply, realizing that it was in it that all the strength he possessed was located. At that moment, he understood that all martial arts and techniques belonged only to him. Despite the fact that he came to such conclusions, he decided that he still needed to try once. For this, he began to meditate. While meditating, he thought about the martial arts he had seen so far, and even the flow of energy that he observed through his fiery eyes and golden vision. All this reminded him of an uncontrolled movement of energy, and all this was called the flow of qi. To effectively control this flow of energy and direct it with your will, you need to turn it into a martial art. He remembered the conversation of the bearded man who said that originally martial arts were based on breathing to create strength. The key point in this situation was breathing. Breathing regulated the smooth flow of qi. This is the basic method of cultivating internal energy. But the transformation of water, true qi, is such a possibility to use martial arts underwater without breathing unconsciously, instead of relying on hearing, touch, or sight. He thought that Wukong was focusing solely on qi control, so he decided to take the essence of true qi of water transformation as the basis. Then he will control his demonic energy relying so much on sensations and willpower with utmost precision. He continued to practice Neem medicine in order to concentrate all his powers. He also needed to understand what martial arts and techniques he could use. After all, in reality, the lethal blow revealed in ordinary movements was like poison. Short delays followed by sharp bursts of energy were unique in their own way. At that moment, he decided that he would carry the new flow into the basis of transformation into true qi. If anyone could know what Sun Wukong was thinking at that moment, he would be shocked. Since no one had even tried to do this before in the entire history of martial arts, he had the idea that take the best elements from various martial arts and create a completely new ultimate technique. At that moment, he thought if he could do this, then what people call the absolute highest martial art would appear. But still, many eccentric experts and great martial artists have tried to do this countless times. And despite all their efforts, the vast majority failed. This is what led to the deviation in cultivation. An ordinary person would start coughing up blood, and their vision would deteriorate. And an ordinary person would have grabbed his throat and fallen from the unbearable pressure. But he was not like that at all. He was ready to absorb and pass through himself all this pain that was supposed to destroy an ordinary person. Wukong remembered that his anger came from an evil spirit, and this spirit wandering uncontrollably inside his body, he only has to protect himself. He also remembered the words that he was told that he should not lose his vigilance, his foundation of the stand, no matter where he was. Despite the fact that at that moment he was in unbearable pain, he was able to control himself. That's why he closed his eyes and thought about what was inside him, namely that same powerful effort thanks to which he became a great warrior. After all, he is not Caleb standing firmly on two legs. He must only watch and wait for the right moment. And the energy of Ekai, rapidly flowing through the internal meridians, moves in a complex and carefully thought-out flow, becoming even more dangerous. In fact, two different streams of energy are constantly mixing and intertwining, but they never merge into one stream. Each of them exists in a single harmony. He felt for the first time that his demonic was circulating through all 12 meridians. Although Sun Wukong thought it was like a martial artist describing the complete circulation of qi, After it was all over, he shook his two fists and told himself that he hoped this will be enough to survive in this mortal world and complete the task. At the same time, the Namgung clan itself was very quiet and deserted. The bearded man walked along one of the streets and watched what was happening in the houses. He caught himself thinking that there weren't that many people in the Namgung clan. Even the highest ranks were completely dedicated to their studies. When he started eating, it became clear to him why so many travelers wanted to become guests of the Namgung clan. After all, this clan actually provides the most important place for sleeping, and they provide food for guests. Absolutely all conditions were created for them to live in comfort. When the bearded man lay down on his bed, he thought that it was just a wonderful corner for living. Well, when he woke up, he grabbed his head and had the feeling that he still hadn't gotten enough sleep. He sat and thought that he felt sorry for himself to a greater degree because he was born a robber. But he is still a master of martial arts. Even as an expelled student from Shaolin, he mastered and mastered many martial arts. In his youth, he dreamed of becoming the strongest martial artist in the world, and it was then that he craved power more than anyone else. At that moment, he thought that it was just age taking its toll, and he had nothing usual. He remembered that Sun had also been quite busy lately, although he seemed like a lazy boy. In fact, he was constantly training in the backyard. For a man of his level, it is only natural that he did not neglect training. The bearded man decided that he, like everyone else, should start training. So he went to the backyard. He took his sword and left his room and headed to the place where he was going to train. At that moment, he heard Wukong's voice calling him. The bearded man stopped and turned his head. Wukong asked him where he was going. The bearded man replied that he was going to training, but he thought that this guy was making fun of him. The concrete was mocking. After which, the bearded man turned around and went. Wukong followed him. Then the bearded man asked why he was following him. Wukong told him that he was going to train with him. The bearded man was surprised and asked again if he would be against it. Usually, only family members or teachers are allowed to observe training or education. But let's teach his eccentric character nothing surprising in disregard for the rules, and he was looking forward to it. It's a great opportunity to see Wukong's fighting skills in action. After a while, they came out into the backyard where their training was supposed to begin. When they came out, Kun immediately said that he wanted to fight with him. The bearded man asked again. Then the guy answered that the best way to understand is to see everything with your own eyes. Wukong saw the bearded man's face and said that he really thinks that he will kill him. The bearded man replied that it still sounded threatening, and he wondered whether he should do it. But despite all his doubts, he decided to do it, so he took out his sword to start the fight. The bearded man took a pose to receive the first attack of his opponent. He seemed to be ready for it. The bearded man didn't understand what was going on, because this guy seemed to offer one, but in the end he stood to the side with his arms folded across his chest. It was very strange for him because the guy had no intention of attacking him. The bearded man thought that, given his abilities, he should not underestimate Sun Wukong, and it was important for him to be prepared. He looked at his opponent and at some point thought what kind of stance he had. When the bearded man carefully examined the stance Wukong was in, it became even more unclear to him. After all, his opponent repeated his pose. But if he fights with bare hands, his initial stance should not be different. Wukong said that so that he would not worry, he would give him 10 movements that he could use as he wanted in the world of martial arts. Even one movement could be decisive for victory or defeat. Apparently, in fact, no one cared how weak he seemed. The bearded man thought that he hated being underestimated, and pushing off, he tried to attack Wukong first, trying to strike him with a sword. The bearded man realized that after copying his pose, and since he copied his stance, his movements when dodging the blow were clumsy, and it seemed like it was not his movement at all. The bearded man thought that if he suddenly moved forward at this moment, he might succeed. This is exactly what the bearded man decided to do to Wukong, since it seemed to him that he had an advantageous position. But in this fight, his opponent dodged his blow very quickly, so he couldn't even touch him. The bearded man did not lose his head and tried to land a few more blows, but his opponent in this fight dodged each of these blows. The bearded man even got very angry at one point and was ready to deliver a really strong blow to show what he was capable of. But despite all his efforts, none of his blows reached the target, but he still did not give up. At that moment, he saw Wukong push off the ground to make the next maneuver, and then he turned over in the air several times and found himself on the other side of the place where he was. When Wukong landed, he looked at the bearded man. Not a single attack had hit its target, and he was undamaged. Borody looked at the guy and thought that, as I expected, he couldn't even touch him. When the bearded man looked closely at this guy and how he moves, his face, every movement he made when he dodged his attack to the side reminded him of something. And the most important thing is how he moved his hands. It was definitely very familiar to him. The bearded man caught himself thinking that something was wrong here, and why he saw a completely different person in this guy. Namely, he saw in him his teacher who taught him all the fighting techniques. When Wukong stood fighting Buzi, it seemed that during the day he had a bearded man's teacher. Wukong said at the end of the fight that he was taking their fight too seriously, and now he won't hold back. When the bearded man heard these words, he realized that if he didn't try, it would definitely be the end for him. He even seemed very scared. Beads of sweat were running down his face. He didn't like it at all. Time passed, but their training in the backyard continued. None of them were going to give up, despite the fact that the bearded man tried to grab his opponent and strike him. But his opponent seemed to get everything much faster and better and easily dodged each of his blows. Wukong showed in this training that he can act very quickly and repeat every move he makes. He just needed to see the basics of the technique that he had mastered back in Shaolin. Kun was moving very quickly all this time, dodging the blows even though he didn't have any weapons in his hands. The bearded man thought that Wukong had switched from the sword to his fists for some unknown reason. And was it really the same art as his teachers? Because it was just unclear why he was able to fight better than himself. And besides, the forms were gradually starting to merge. At some point, he even thought that this couldn't be. He pushed this thought away from himself. But from the moment he started to repeat his teacher's movements, his strikes became much more accurate. All this was visible even to the naked eye. Only one training session was enough for him to learn this fighting technique. At the end of the training, Wukong couldn't hold back and pushed his opponent aside so that he couldn't stand on his feet. The bearded man really couldn't stand on his feet and fell on his back with a loud bang. At this point, Wukong said that everything was now clear and added that he had barely touched him and that he would stop pretending. The bearded man stood up, turned to the great warrior and said that he had copied his martial art. And to himself, he thought that the most difficult part of mastering martial arts was done by him. He did not understand where he could go next. After all, knowledge is self-realization, and he had just experienced the goal and ideal form of his teacher. He did not understand whether he would be able to fight in his life like Wukong. The bearded man couldn't hold back and asked the guy how he did it. Wukong asked what he meant. Then the bearded man said that he just saw his martial art. And he used it even better than him, Wukong said. Is it true and he really uses this martial art better? In fact, he said that he simply repeated the movement and you don't see anything special there. Baroda thought most likely he was making fun of her, and as usual, he didn't want to tell the truth. After this training, Wukong climbed to a high place where the entire Namong sect was visible in the palm of his hand. He looked down on this clan and thought that several days had already passed, but he still couldn't merge the two streams. It really irritated him. He thought how he was worse than the others. Why he couldn't do anything. It was not surprising that he couldn't do anything because martial arts techniques had been perfected and developed over thousands of years, passed down from the great minds of history. Of course, it was unclear whether he would be able to bring them to perfection in just 7 days. And besides, Wukong was trying to merge two fighting forces into one. Even the greatest master would not be able to cope with this so quickly. Well, no matter how unknown the path is or how late it will be opened, until that moment his fighting style is that. He simply swung his fists and kicked like whirlwinds, crushing his enemies. But people even with one breath with the most insignificant movement of chi, they follow fixed forms and structures. Only in this way could people control and manage wild energy. In his combat philosophy, there was no such thing associated with demonic energy. So he needs to control his demonic energy in the most perfect form and find the most correct way to combine it with forms and techniques. Wukong thought it would be great to fight other martial artists and test himself, but before that, he decided that he needed to get rid of the surveillance that was constantly following him. He didn't think long, pushed off, and very quickly disappeared from the very place where he was at that moment. He did it so quickly that it was unbearable to understand which way he was heading. Within a few seconds, he was moving at such a high speed that it was impossible to catch up with him. As he ran, he saw a tree in front of him, and on this tree sat a small bird. Flying closer to her, he said that the world does not stand still. Time goes by, but some things remain unchanged. In front of him was a white owl, who, upon seeing him, turned around and looked at him with her huge eyes. This owl was so scared of the guy that the moment she saw him in the clouds, she flapped her wings and flew away. Wukong immediately went after her. He couldn't let her escape from him, and in a few seconds he was holding this owl in his hands. He looked at her and said that she couldn't smell very quickly. He looked at this bird and thought how much desire it had to get rid of his presence. This owl asked who he was. Wukong answered her that judging by the fact that she didn't recognize him, he must be a very young mountain spirit who had recently appeared here. Only after this did the guy introduce himself and say that he should know about the great sage equal to heaven, Sun Wukong. The little owl was a little scared. I ordered that a little more and he would cry. He was scared. After all, he really heard about such a great sage from the elders. They said that he was still an idiot and you can't mess with him. The little owl wondered if this was really the same mad horse. Then he caught himself wondering if he had said it out loud. Wukong answered him, "If he says something like that again, he will boil him alive and eat him." The owlet said that he is a local earth spirit and a mountain spirit. What does he need from him? Wukong then told him to watch his words. He was the first to start spying on him. The owlet replied that he felt a powerful energy and was convinced of its truth. It was his job. Wukong thought if he really was a local spirit of the earth, then he probably saw everything that happened in this place, or there were some unusual events here. The little owl asked again if there was spiritual activity or bursts of energy here, but in fact, ordinary people would not notice if the soul disappeared or was destroyed, but the mountain spirit would definitely feel it. After all, in fact, it was not a simple soul, but a powerful spirit of a former Buddha. Samjanya the owl said that in the Namong clan, there was a moment when spiritual energy raged like an assault. Wukong wanted to know from him what happened and who took the soul, because this was the very reason why he came to this place. The mountain spirit answered him that he really didn't remember, even if he tried very hard to remember. When I heard Wukong say that he doesn't understand how he should understand all this, at that moment, he heard some strange sounds, but he became wary because someone was walking very close. They returned their heads to the woman and looked in the direction from where the sounds of footsteps were coming from. After some time, Wukong saw a man in the clearing where they were. The mountain spirit in the form of a white owl took off. The guy thought that this man's aura was like that of the greatest demon? Well, what is this man like? This man did not expect, but said that he did not even expect that their dear Baek Hai would have a guest, and who would have thought that Mr. Sun would come in person. When Wukong raised his head, he saw that in front of him stood a man with a calm but all-consuming aura, and it belonged to the leader of the Namong clan. It was he who appeared in this clearing, and it was on his hand that this little owl gained strength. The clan leader turned his head and looked at the guy. He wanted to understand what he really was. Wukong also looked at the clan leader. He was once again convinced that there was that same thread between them. The clan leader said that Baek, he is a spiritual being who has been watching the mountain for centuries, and he has been here since the time when his ancestor was alive, and he was close to his older brother. He also added that the feathers of this owlet are so white, so pure, like snow. White owl, isn't that enough to understand that he is a spiritual being? The guy looked at this little owl and thought that he seemed to gain courage when he had an ally next to him. At some point, he even thought that perhaps he should have eaten it while he had the chance. The clan leader asked what brought him here at such a late hour. Wukong wasn't going to answer him right away. He looked at the clan leader again and caught himself thinking that his gaze was piercing like steel. The clan leader was serious, and the department really wanted to find out what this guy was up to and why he asked to join their clan. Wukong felt this look and caught himself thinking that he even felt a little uneasy. But despite all this, he did not answer him. He turned around and looked him straight in the face. As he turned around, he came very close to the clan leader and stood right in front of him. He understood that this was the greatest sword clan and its leader standing right in front of him. The guy didn't make excuses. He told the clan leader that he was just taking a walk. And then looking him straight in the eyes, he said, "Is something really wrong?" While he was thinking whether to challenge him right now, Wukong replied to the clan leader that he just decided to take a walk. Does that pose a problem? Wukong looked straight at the clan leader and thought of only one thing. Does he really want to fight? And does he really want to do this right here and now, despite the fact that he is his guest? Wukong did not continue this conversation any further. He understood that he could not allow him to do this. So he took a step forward and thought that the time had not yet come. He could always do it. Wukong stopped when leaving and asked the clan leader because he had one question. Then the guy said that the clan leader doubts and fears him, so why did they accept him as a guest? The clan leader thought he was quite insightful and didn't expect the guy to say something like that straight to his face. The clan leader said he just had a feeling they had met before. Wukong then realized that he does not see the threads of fate, but he clearly feels something. He is not so simple. The guy said that this is their first meeting. The clan leader said that if he wanted to hide his past and personal affairs, he shouldn't interfere in other people's affairs. But Mr. Song came to the clan's doorstep for some purpose. Then the guy replied that he was looking for one person. The clan leader asked who this person was. Wukong said that he didn't know his name and had never even seen him. He just feels and knows that something connects them. Fate brought them together, so he won't pass by her. The clan leader thought that all this sounded like the words of a wise monk. Could he really be from Shaolin? The clan leader said then that in order to find this person, he would have to stay in the clan for a while. He then added that he didn't mind at all, but their family had lost many relatives to spies in the Great War. That's why they were so wary of outsiders. And if he plans to stay, he will have to earn trust. He has one assignment that will allow him to do. Wukong lowered his head, listened to his proposal to the end, and said that of course he was ready. The head of the clan asked him again because he didn't even know what these proposals were in essence. The guy replied that given their connection, does it matter? Didn't he say that this was their first meeting? The guy looked again at the head of the clan, and at that moment he smiled at him without saying anything. He then added that if they are connected by threads that stretch from their past life. When he said this, the head of the clan thought about it, because it really could have been like that, and they could have met in a past life. Wukong thought even if the clan leader is not Sam John, his connection with him is as strong as Ju Baji's. He thought, if he is trustworthy, he will definitely be able to get the help he needs and the favor of the clan leader. At that moment, he thought that the story that was supposed to be told by the mountain spirit could wait. Wukong immediately turned around and decided to follow the business that was entrusted to him. Just a couple of days later, she was on a moonlit street in the provincial town of Ankoi. He, like last time, walked down the street and the people who met him all turned and looked only in his direction. Walking along this busy street, Wukong felt the attention of other people. A bearded man was walking behind him. Wukong turned his head and asked him if he checked the most famous forge, to which the bearded man told him that yes, if you go through one alley, you can find Yanha's shop. It is not clear why he needed the forge. Wukong answered him that he wanted to get a weapon and that a staff would suit him best. After which he asked if he really didn't know what weapon the great son Wukong considered the most valuable. The bearded man said without hesitation that this was probably the golden club of his life. He still adhered to this style. When they entered the forge, the guy asked if it was possible to order the heaviest iron staff. The blacksmith was surprised because he needed not a spear but a staff. Everyone wondered who this guy was. He looked like he came from a noble family. Then Wukong said that he knew he was handsome, but when they looked at him for too long, he felt awkward. Then he held out a piece of metal he had found and said that he had melted it and wrapped it around the tip of his staff. Kuznetsk accepted the job and began to fulfill the order that the guy had given him. Well, when he tried to melt the iron that was given to him, he was very surprised, after which he looked again and only then realized that it was real meteorite iron. Wukong then told the blacksmith that Taishan Laojun himself was one of his family of stars, and that was exactly it. He asked the blacksmith if he could handle it, and if he succeeds, he will be able to get meteorite iron, and then they will wrap the whole staff in it. The blacksmith held meteorite iron in his hands. I understood that it was very difficult to find, and the guy clearly had serious intentions, because he already had some of the iron. That's why the blacksmith asked them to provide it to him because he could do it in the best possible way. The bearded man then asked the guy if this junk had really been meteorite iron all along, and it was no wonder that the bloody ghost was obsessed with it. It was unclear whether this forge should be trusted to make weapons, but that was only one of the reasons for the visit, since Namgun's family asked him to find them. The bearded man heard about this for the first time, so he asked again about what favor. Wukong started to tell from the very beginning that the blacksmith Yang Ha had worked with the Namgun family for a long time. After the war, you lost control of the forge to your rivals from the Cheonhep clan. You are because the Cheonhep clan entered into an alliance with the Hosean Gate. After which the guy said that before the union was strengthened, he was going to help you return the forge and the craftsman. When the bearded man heard about this, he realized that this was a whole task and was a little surprised that he was entrusted with it. And he was also surprised because Hosen was one of the most sinister sects. It was not so easy for even the 5 great families to deal with them. It looked like the Hosan Gate was trying to seize the Anhui trade market, and the relationship with the Namgun clan was very strained. The bearded man did not understand at all why he agreed to this. If they interfere, the Namgun clan can shift all responsibility onto him, and in an unforeseen situation, no support can be expected from them. And most importantly, the hatred of the Kionhep clan and the anger effects will fall on him. Wukong looked at him at that moment and didn't ask why he was really worried about him. The bearded man came closer to him and said again, "Oh my God, what is he doing?" and asked him to just run away. Wukong told him not to worry. He had everything under control, and then Vosh hugged him and said that he needed to eat and order noodles. The bearded man suddenly asked the guy if he could take 2 plates. Wukong looked around, he just threw the bait. But in reality, all that was left was to wait, holding the fishing rod tightly in my hands. When they entered the cafe, the guy asked the bearded man if he would definitely be able to eat everything he ordered. Wukong looked at him as he ate and said that in his past life he was not so greedy and gluttonous. At that moment, a bearded girl entered the cafe, turned his Borova and froze. He looked her up and down and thought what a beautiful girl. He was even more surprised when he realized that this girl was walking towards them. When she approached, she asked why he was looking at her like that. In fact, he forgot himself. A little told him that he only glanced at her. She said that she had special makeup to hide her identity. Wukong dead, that it works. His friend did not notice her at all. The girl leaned over to the bearded man and told him to be quieter. That's when he realized that it was the head of the Bra Order Hall. She said that this was the territory of the Kionhep clan. The girl turned to the guy and said that she heard that he was supposed to cooperate with the warriors of their clan. So why doesn't he do it? She was only interested in one question. Why was he acting alone and not needing anyone's help? Then he replied that he acted thinking he was doing what was best for the Namgun family. The girl said that she was making her plans for you. Then he replied that he wanted to guess by force to pull out of him the necessary information. Most likely this was one of the plans. Then he asked her what she was suggesting. She thought for a bit and said that she noticed that the blacksmith was quite lively when she arrived. Then the guy replied that he just ordered the weapon. She asked him again if he was serious because he stood out too much. The very next moment, they heard a stomp that was very close and approaching them. Wukong said that it would take too long to explain why it was done, so she just had to look at the whole side. A man approached them and greeted the young gentleman and said that he had heard that he had rare metals, Sveta. The people who came to the table were well sensible. They were not at all in a good-natured mood. The bearded man sitting at this table, without turning his head, looked at the girl all the time. He couldn't take his eyes off her. The fat girl in turn watched what was happening and the people who approached them. One of these representatives said that he wanted to make a deal with the young man, after which he put his hand on the table. He realized that the liquid had been swallowed. Wukong also understood that everything was going according to his plan, and it was time to pull the line. This man, when he approached the table, started talking about how he heard that they had rare materials, and whether he wanted to make a deal with him. There were quite a lot of these people, and they were all armed. The bearded man thought it was all very strange that they found them in this place, and that they made them such an offer. This man had been watching Wukong since the moment he stepped into the forge. He caught himself thinking that there was something about this guy that resembled nobility. That very moment, he thought that this guy had black iron, and maybe he had other substances. Well, looking at this guy, he didn't feel anything. No internal energy came from him. This man, looking at the guy, thought that he looked like a rich man and a foreigner who travels around the regions for fun. The bearded man, in turn, understood that the thug standing next to this man looked like a bodyguard. And also, when he looked at the girl, he noticed that she had a sword hidden, but there was no hint of energy in her. This man thought that if they came from Tibet, then there was nothing special about their connection with the world of martial arts, and he only wanted to get the black iron. And then his position in the clan will improve. What happened next, he could not even imagine. The guy extended his index finger and began to count 2-3 times. Then he said the number 4, got to 9, then said 10, and finally said 11. It was 11 worthless fluff who said he wasn't good enough to make such a deal and told this guy to stop acting like he was cool. And he shouldn't drag it out and get down to business. They were just a pack of dogs drooling over black iron. He called them a bunch of beggars ready to tear their throats out for the last piece of bread to the left, and he behaved like that only because there was a bodyguard nearby ready to take the hit. Wukong then asked the bearded man if he had really become his bodyguard. The bearded man said that this was some kind of terrible misunderstanding. The girl noticed that this was also part of the plan. This man didn't understand what these idiots were talking about. That's why he ordered his soldiers to grab him. When the bearded man heard that there was an order to capture them, the first thing he grabbed was his sword. Wukong continued to sit at the table. He didn't even rise from his seat. I asked the bearded man if he would really take this whole blow on himself. The bearded man told him to read it out of nobility for the lesson he had taught him. At first, Wukong didn't understand what he was talking about. But then he said that now everything became clear to him. These fighters who received the command to attack rushed forward ready to attack these three. The bearded man was the first to take the full brunt of the attack, despite the fact that there were many times more attackers. The girl quietly took out her sword, which was hidden under her wide dress, and she also entered the battle. The only one who continued to sit at that table was Wukong. It was he who made this massacre happen. Well, he was the only one who decided not to join this retreat. The girl came to the aid of the bearded man. The witch sold herself, on the other hand, was a large number. She could not allow herself not to help him. The attackers saw that she had also entered the battle and began to attack with even greater fury. The bearded man and the girl poured out one attack after another, standing shoulder to shoulder. The bearded man took the man's attack on himself and tried to stop him. This man told him that he behaves peacefully like the king of this world, but there is nothing special in his skills. The bearded man tried not to listen to him. He understood that these were just words, and he really didn't have great skills. So he jumped up and struck from top to bottom so that his opponent didn't even have time to dodge this blow. The bearded man accelerated so much and dealt so many blows that no one expected him to. This man didn't understand what was wrong with him. He suddenly started attacking so quickly, but initially he couldn't cope and wasn't ready to repel the blows. Beard at this moment realized that this was the very lesson that Wukong had given him. When they returned, the bearded man knelt down in front of Wukong, saying that he was asking him please. The guy didn't understand what he was doing and why he was behaving like that. He was very surprised. He thought that one word was enough. He should ask to teach him a new technique, and that's it. The bearded man said that he understood a lot after their fight, and if he could give instructions to the stupid martial artist, then he would treasure these instructions like gold and jade. The guy was very surprised and said that The bearded man suddenly interrupted him and said that he had something to learn from Wukong. His techniques only work in water, nothing special. When the guy heard these words, he said, "Does he really think so?" Then he needed to understand only one thing. He doesn't need to think about the fact that he is on land during the battle. Wukong tried to explain to him that he needs to move as if he were floating on water. That's the only thing he can teach him. The bearded man thought even if he imagined water around him, it wouldn't change anything because his feet would be standing on the ground. He didn't understand what kind of stupidity this was. At least that's what it seemed to him at first. But later he realized it when he remembered that very fight. It was because of this that he was able to accelerate so that his opponent could not see him and stop him. It was this advice that became the key to mastering the water flow technique, which he successfully applied in his last battle. Even she, who tried to come to his aid, stopped at some point and looked at his equipment. She understood that the bearded man did not need her help at all. He was much stronger. She then wondered if she had made a mistake and he was holding up better than she thought. His fighting style was unusual. After all, she always believed that breathing was necessary for the development of internal energy, but he held his breath. At some point, she even noticed that he wasn't breathing at all, which contradicted everything she knew. At some point, she stopped, went to the table, and said that she did not think that her help would be needed. At that moment, Wukong suggested that she just watch. It seemed from the outside that the bearded man could not stop. He destroyed one enemy after another. At that moment, Wukong told the girl that he was waiting for a hint, but he's doing well. Unexpectedly, he quickly grasps everything. At some point, the bearded man felt that he needed to catch his breath. He turned away and took a few steps back, exhaled, and took a deep breath. After that, he immediately turned around and began to attack the enemy again, destroying one after another. At that moment, the guy realized that there was something very familiar to him in the pose the bearded man was standing in. After thinking for a bit, he realized that this was the same pose that he had already seen, and he was copying what they showed him. Namely, he copied the very belly that was in their bayou. He clearly showed it. After all, this pose in his bay was called the rapid flow of the river, and he completely mastered this technique. And most importantly, the rapid flow of the river gives him the opportunity to move freely. All this reminded him of his technique, and when he moved, it could be said that he was a turtle swimming with the current. Despite the fact that this fight was not in the water at all, the bearded man successfully applied all his techniques on land as well. After a few minutes, he was already forging the guys who tried to attack him. Naya dealt them mortal damage, after which he turned around and dealt more damage to several guys who were behind him. Their commander did not understand how this was possible. Apparently, she indicated that they were wandering wanderers, but this bandit and the girl were on top of their game. He understood that their skills were incredibly strong, since not a single one of his warriors remained. When the bearded man stopped, he thought that thanks to this advice and thanks to this fight, he was able to move forward and can now use water technology on land as well. He was pleased that everything worked out for him, and he was also pleased that he listened to the advice. The bearded man turned and looked at the guy. He wanted to tell him something. First of all, he wanted to ask why he couldn't tell him about it earlier. And why did he never say that he just needs to hold his breath and everything will work out? Wukong answered him that this is the easy path and only weaklings choose it, and all because he heard him. The man who was watching everything that was happening at some point realized that his business was bad. And most importantly, he understood that he would never be able to cope with them. He needed to run while there was still an opportunity. Wukong watched his behavior and how he quickly disappeared from the establishment. You could only hear how he hit one of the chairs, and that chair fell a little. Well, suddenly his path was blocked by Wukong, who stood right in front of him. This man thought that even if he was a master of martial arts, he would be able to knock him out in one blow, and swung to deliver this blow. Kun stood there. He wasn't going to get away from this blow. He was very interested. After all, it seemed ideal to him and a great chance to test his abilities in battle. He just raised his one hand and thought that he could test the very martial art that he had invented himself. Spiritual energy was initially unstable like a storm, but at the moment, instead of expanding, he decided to compress his power. It was after he devoured his power that he was able to repel his opponent's attack. Not only did he not dodge, but he repelled the enemy's attack and was able to throw him back. This man did not understand what happened. His sword was broken into small pieces and how it reflected his attack. He had only questions and no answers. He was very scared because he thought it was impossible. Wukong didn't think long after he parried the attack. He delivered another blow to his face with all his might. Thus, he knocked him down so that his opponent fell down. He understood perfectly what the essence of the compression of spiritual energy was. He thought that from that moment on he could do whatever he felt was necessary. So he dealt a few more blows to that man. This man could not withstand such blows and did not resist him. The guy thought that he was a great sage equal to the heavens, ready to become his mentor, and extended his hand to him, near which he became angry and kicked his opponent lying on the ground several times. The girl at that moment thought, turning to Wukong, maybe he was just a decoy to create excuses, or use bait to awaken their greed and make them attack first. The most important thing is to go to the stock on the Blue Alliance's FRA to regain control. Well, such methods were more suitable for the clan leader, but not for this guy. Wukong, after delivering the last few kicks to his opponent, and stood there for a while looking at him. The girl then turned to him that in this way the alliance would become their enemies. Despite their motives, they still belonged to the righteous martial world. Wukong turned his head and looked at her silently, and then added that in this situation, they would now head to the Blue Alliance. Therefore, all the beaten warriors took their leader and followed Wukong and his friends. They walked along the largest and busiest street, and everyone paid attention to them. The girl said that they don't attract too much attention, to which the guy replied that this is what they need. She wasn't so sure that this was what she wanted in her life. The only thing she asked us was that he has a new plan, and he should tell her more about it. Wukong answered her that if she needs her assistance, she just has to wait a little. In that case, she thought that most likely he should create excuses and attack in such a way that it is too common for the combat world. In the Namong clan, the elder said that they will nominate the guy as their representative, and when he encounters the Blue Alliance, Namgung's family will intervene. Hiding behind the pretext of protection and guest, the family is already known to have the worst reputation if they demonstrate that they are ready to commit any dishonest acts for the sake of profit. She walked and looked at the guy and realized that now he was too similar in his behavior to the members of their clan. Well, the guy, despite everything that was happening, was happy with what happened. Everything went according to his plan. When he was in the center of the square, he started shouting for everyone to gather around him. People didn't understand what was going on, but the guy said that these people were the owners of the forge and pointed his finger at them. After which he said that they attacked them first without explaining the reason why they did it. Most likely they didn't try to rob him and take the iron. He spoke about it so convincingly that it was unbearable not to believe him. Everyone wanted to know what kind of iron it was if the members of the Blue Alliance came for it. Apparently, it wasn't just ordinary ore. Everyone wanted to know who this foreigner was and how it would all end. This guy is most likely going to fight the Blue Alliance alone. The girl thought that some of those present in this square were from the Haman sect or the clan of fugitives, even if this is so. Soon, the news of everything that is happening here will spread throughout the province. The guy screamed that how can he trust people who commit such insidious acts and also want to steal his things? He immediately cancels the order for the iron staff. The guys from the forge didn't know how to react to this, but they stood silently and couldn't say anything. After which they brought out the chest and said that they had also consulted with their artisans on the forging process. And the blacksmiths also stated that they had never touched his materials. They handed him this chest. They also said that when Namgung's family ran this forge, this never happened. They said that this is the very meteorite iron. At that moment, the guy opened this chest. What was the surprise of everyone standing there? No one could even say a word because they didn't know how to react to it. The blacksmith and his workers also did not understand what was happening at all. They did not know the explanation for this. The bearded man was the only one who could ask what it was and why all this was needed. Wukong looked silently into the box, lowered his eyes, but he saw nothing in it. Everyone wanted to understand why this chest was empty and where the iron actually went. The place of iron you there in the chest was one single hair that was torn out from the head of Wukong. The bearded man said that in this chest there is only a lock of hair of the great hero, and the fragment of the sword has disappeared. The blacksmith grabbed his head. He did not understand how it happened, because he actually locked it for safekeeping. Others were discussing how they saw him leave the forge with the materials along with the alliance members. But what actually happened? Wukong listened carefully to everything that was said around him. He needed everything to go according to his plan. Some of those present began to say that these bastards from the Blue Alliance had already stolen the iron and still dared to call themselves part of the righteous fighting world. At that moment, Wukong turned to them. These guys sitting on the ground did not know what to answer him. They were very scared. Then he said that their methods were too crude and their greed knew no bounds. After which he told these guys that the Alliance should take responsibility for what happened. After some time, in the Blue Alliance faction of Cheonhep, its representatives clarified whether Wukong was sure that he entrusted the iron to the blacksmiths of Yang, and not to another. The head of this clan was told that yes, all the masters confirmed this, and other clients of the forge were also witnesses. It is not clear where this material is, and we have not yet received information about this person. He seems to be a new guest of the Namgung family. The head of the clan then shouted that these bastards from the Namgung clan had driven them to it with requests to sell them the rights to Yangha's business, and now they were doing something like this. The head of the Blue Alliance, Seo Sungbo, was furious about what happened, although he thought that this could be a great opportunity for them. And even at that moment, when we realized all this, his face broke into a huge smile. He thought that at the moment they were perceived as aggressors, and the right to manage the Huang Yi Hotel, and the right to manage the Blue Alliance silk store. But if they make concessions and return a small part of the business, won't everyone think that the Namgung family is behind this? He thought that they could visit their main business interests by getting support from other military secret services. After all, he believed that Namgung's family had already been rejected by the righteous forces, and that this incident should be used as a push. He decided that he could turn Namgung's family into a common enemy. Even during the time in the Namgung clan, everything was as usual, discussing the latest events. They were sitting at the same table, and the girl said that all this would not bring them any benefit to me. She believed that they could not return some rights as an apology, but such valuable assets as the forge would be difficult to return. After all, the main problem is public opinion. This incident will definitely be perceived as a matter of the Namgung family. She thought that people would think that they were secretly setting traps and plotting something. The Blue Alliance belongs to the righteous faction, but they are very cunning. Although they are a bit cunning and display unorthodox tendencies, they are officially part of the righteous faction. When Wukong heard these words from her, he said that this was all he needed to know, after which he got up from the table. And then he went to the window and looked into the distance for a very long time. The girl did not understand why he was behaving like that. And most importantly, she wanted to know what he was thinking about, because she couldn't read his thoughts. Wukong thought that it would be like that the Blue Alliance stole meteorite iron in the underground world. This is called wanchol. Well, actually, it's a fragment of the Seven Stars sword, and the Blue Alliance will be the target. And most importantly, he will become a target for everyone who is looking for this fragment, and not everyone will go to the Blue Alliance. Namely, the very same person who ordered the Bloody Ghost to find this piece of iron. The guy thought that the implementation of his real plan was clearly not difficult, and he should definitely, if two, in order to reach the end. This difficult day was coming to an end. Only one house had lights on, and that was the house of the head of the Blue Alliance. Mo Songbo was sitting at his desk in front of him. There was an open book and he was reading it. His gaze was focused on reading the book. The next moment he heard approaching footsteps. A man entered the room and addressed the head of the clan and said that they had big problems. The head wanted to know what this time. This man said that a strange guy appeared who was waving a sword in their faces and demanding the meteorite iron back. They don't know what to do. The chief replied that the rumors were most likely spread by less, that they have meteorite iron for simple wandering martial artists. It is quite natural to be greedy. The head said that he should decide this issue himself and not spare anyone. Probably many masters gathered who heard false rumors, and he should take advantage of the situation to show his strength. This man tried to infect the head of the clan. She gave him a link that the fact is that all the warriors who were in their clan are already all dead. The head of the clan was very surprised and asked how he should understand the words of his assistant. After this man said these words, he was afraid to say anything else. He stood silently, but the next moment something splashed in the neck area. The man who brought such bad news to the head of the Blue Alliance clan also lost his head. After this man's head flew off to the side, a huge warrior with a huge sword entered this room. The head of the Blue Alliance clan also grabbed his MNCH, not understanding why the hell he burst into his room. This is a huge man with glowing eyes department to find out only one thing. Where is meteorite iron? More accurately, he was interested in where the fragment of the sword that was made of 7 stars was located. The clan leader thought that this guy had a very sinister aura and was from an orthodox sect. When the head of the clan realized what was going on, he told the guy that he shouldn't have come to him. He doesn't have meteorite iron, and even if he did, they wouldn't have given it up voluntarily. This guy didn't think long and said that he then had no other choice but to kill them and burn the place to the ground, which is what he started doing. He said that this is the only way he can find out if what the head of this clan told him was true. Only iron will not melt in the fire. The very next moment, there was a loud explosion. The whole place was on fire. It seemed that no one could survive. At the same time, in another part where the Namong clan was located, everything was calm. The only thing was that a servant was running very quickly along the long corridor and shouting to Mrs. Manhwa. After she ran into the room where the lady was with the bearded man and Wukong, she said that the alliance was attacked, and they were asking for help from the Namong family. The girl turned her head, looked at the servants, and did not understand what it meant to attack, and what it meant to ask for help. After which she turned her head and directed her gaze at Wukong. She wondered if this was really his plan. She didn't fully understand whether it was true or not, but she understood that he really did all this. When Wukong heard about this, he didn't even turn his head or look. He didn't react in any way. Then she thought that this was exactly why he wanted to attract attention. It was unclear whether this was an attempt to push a third party to attack Cheonhep. The girl said that among the opposition Orthodox factions, there is an opinion that when you suddenly ask for help, only one conclusion is suggested. This meant that the people from the villainous faction had arrived. Wukong turned around at this moment and asked the villainous faction again. At that moment, the girl thought that even if he had provoked this attack, he had not expected these people to appear. It was unclear what happened to this alliance, and it was also unclear how the warriors of the Namong family reacted to it. When people hear about sinister factions, no matter who they are, they immediately think, how dare they show up in the province? That's what Manhwa thought when she heard about it. Unexpectedly for everyone, Kun turned around and there was a smile on his face. It seemed that everything was going according to plan. Then he very quickly headed towards the exit, while he said that before they would return the rights to manage the forge, they needed help from the alliance. The girl shouted to her assistant to gather as many people as possible and told them to come to Cheonhep immediately. Kun started moving very quickly. He realized that the bait he had thrown was still being bitten. Well, the only thing he understood at that moment was that this time he was not alone but with members of the Namong clan. That's why he was the first to move to help the alliance. It was also part of his plan. As they started getting closer, they saw that the entire Blue Alliance was on fire. The three of them stopped right in front of the building that was engulfed in flames and in front of which stood many more warriors. When Manhwa saw this picture, she said that the building was completely burned down. Nothing was left. The bearded man confirmed that the flames of the fire were spreading everywhere. The girl also said that these are the forces of darkness operating in the province, and all the faction leaders have gathered in this place. The first anal saw the master of the Black Lotus Huang Dongan. Along with him was the head of the family Hyokajong. Further on stood two more, the head of the Black Dragon, Zhang Il-jong, and the head of the Rain Clouds, Park Jong-nam. Wukong at this moment realized that the bloody ghost was in cahoots with them, and they were all looking for the fragment of the seven-star sword. All these clan representatives were in this place for only one purpose, to get meteorite iron. Hojek Ak, the head of the Ho-gajong clan, noticed a white stripe on the blue legs of the sword. He understood that this person was from the Namgun family, and he would have to tinker with him. But he wasn't the only one who noticed this. Everyone else saw the blue ones tied with white stripes too. One of the representatives said that their goal is not to destroy Chung Hep. They thought that if he goes this way, then they will have a chance to share the benefits with the Namgung clan. Namely, they were supposed to separate the Yangha and Hosen factions, as well as the Soha Inn and the Soha Pagan headquarters. They were ready to give them everything. It was a rather advantageous offer that was unbearable to refuse. The girl thought that all four places were the places that passed into the hands of Kionhep during the Great Battle. These are two good conditions. That is why the proposal turned out to be even more suspicious. If it becomes known that the dark forces have united and attacked the righteous factions, no one will leave it that easily. Even if they tried to resolve the issue through peaceful negotiations, the risk was too great, she thought. Can't they really count on luck? No. All this was not their style. Most likely they will strive to control numerous businesses. The leaders who were in this place took this risk. She wanted to understand what they were planning and what their goal was. Wukong said that someone united the dark forces of the province and stood at the head of them, and this person's goal is clearly not an alliance. One of these people shouted at Wukong that he was a scoundrel who had turned Cheonghep into ruins. In response, the young man said that he would be the first. Then, the head of one of the clans was very surprised and asked again what he said. Wukong told him that he would kill him first if he didn't understand what he just told him. The clan leader's lower lip immediately began to tremble. He bit it and did not say another word. He had no choice but to step forward to engage in battle with this impudent fellow. The clan leader took a few steps forward and decided that he should attack first, and he thought that he could punish this impudent fellow. Well, what was his surprise that he didn't even have time to draw his sword? Wukong intercepted his hand. The young man looked at him and asked why he was looking at him like that. And then he bent down and quietly, so that no one else could hear, added that he didn't like that kind of thing. Immediately after these words, he struck the clan leader so hard that he was thrown aside. The clan leader couldn't withstand this blow and was thrown back. He couldn't even stay on his feet. When the clan leader decided to take out his sword, he noticed that it was broken in half. Then he concluded that this guy was a martial arts master and that he was an opponent not at his level. Then he thought that he didn't know at all how it would all end if they attacked this guy at the same time. After he failed, the clan leader ordered his warriors to deal with the impudent young man. The bearded man and the girl at some point thought that there were too many enemies and they would not be able to defeat them, but they decided to fight to the very end and not let them gain the upper hand. From both sides and from behind, they began to be attacked by warriors who had been given the order. Wukong felt that the bearded man and the girl were not confident that they could win. Then he tried to explain to them that these guys were going to take them hostage and they should be on guard. This was typical thinking for the dark forces. The bearded man assessed the situation and understood how he would enter the battle. Wukong looked at the clan representatives and asked them why they were standing there. He suggested that they come closer. He also told them not to worry, that he would immediately kill them, after which he extended his hand and added that Varen Buddha killing is not his style. He will generously take payment from them for all the crime committed, that's all. He will do to them exactly as a poisonous snake would do. I mean, a bloody ghost. He said that the combat technique that he managed to copy and master would leave only a lifeless body from them. Each of them would exist like a walking corpse. Before his eyes was the same picture that was in the desert leading to Chunju hundreds of years ago. He remembered how hard it was for him, and how he could barely breathe after that very fight. But he also recalled that it was that time that he won despite his efforts. And when he stood on the body of this huge dragon, all the others with whom he was then looked at him as a winner. One of them looked at him and said that he was so angry, and how could anyone who follows the path of Buddha be so cruel? He wanted to ask the young man why he was doing this, because there really was anger on his face. The guy then replied that he killed a demon that tried to eat his teacher. It was not a senseless murder. The guy then asked that he didn't understand why he was being reproached for being angry. Other monsters are afraid, immediately start crying and avoid him when they see his demon king. At that moment, he did not understand why he was not afraid. This was the main question that had no answer. But she gave him a logical answer, and he wasn't afraid only because the tip of the blade was stuck in his head. The guy stood silently. He looked and listened to the answer to the question he asked. And they also told him that he wouldn't even be standing in front of him if it weren't for that blade. They stood for a while and looked at each other. Each of them thought that he was right. Their conversation was interrupted by Jepeje. He said that there was no need to be angry because the teacher always behaved like that. Then Sam Jan told him to step aside so that he would better not interfere. He would punish him today. Jan himself then told him that while defending himself, it is impossible not to defeat the enemy. These demons are only the embodiment of numerous trials and sufferings that block his path. Then he added that the guy overcame these difficulties, but his methods were wrong. Wukong did not understand what the hell, because he killed much more than Sam Jan. He also added that when it comes to fighting, he is far superior to his teacher. The guy said that this is his path, let it be anger or whatever, but he is ready to kill all the demons that stand in his way. No one else interfered in their conversation because they felt that they really had no right to do so. Jan himself lowered his head and said that he did not even understand where this anger that filled his soul and heart was coming from. He also added that it was only because he was hated in the heavenly kingdom, or because he was underestimated, or because of the punishment of the Buddha, who sent him to the guru of the 5 elements. Despite the fact that the teacher wanted to hear the answer to this question, he never received it. The boy raised his head and turned to the teacher. He asked if he had a family. The teacher replied that yes, he does have a family. And the guy told him, but I don't have one. But he always said that the heavens created him, and the earth molded his body, which is why he doesn't have parents. Then he added that he has brothers. Sam Jan asked him, he says now both are monkeys from Mount Huagua. The guy answered that most of them are already dead. He also said that while he was gone, terrible events happened, and then he tore apart and killed with his own hands all these creatures that dared to touch his family. Jan himself tried to interrupt him. He said that quite a long time had passed since then. And from that time on, he became just as cruel and continued to live consumed by rage. Wukong covered her face with her hands. He really had nothing to say in response. It was unexpected for him. His teacher said that he did well. The guy didn't understand why he was saying that. Then the teacher said that if he were in his place, he would not have been able to hold back his anger for so long, because they were his family, and what he did was mercy that saved other lives. The guy said that someone had said before that they should be kind even to those who had done terrible things. The teacher said that they wouldn't, so why should they act like him? After all, this was also a process that formed him and his personality. The teacher thanked him for dealing with those monsters that tried to eat him. It's as harsh as he killed the others who killed his brothers, because he then said that he was also part of his family. And also the teacher said that he wants to see with his own eyes everything that will happen in the future. The most important thing he wanted to see was how the guy would become Buddha. At that moment, tears started to flow in the guy's eyes. I said to teach that he should still be punished for what he did in the light of the events that flashed before his eyes at that moment. Wukong extended his hand forward in such a way that he told the clan representatives to come closer to him, but they stood still. Then he told them again why they were standing there. Let them come closer and not worry. He wouldn't kill them right away. After which he told his opponent that he was still faithful to the principles of Buddha. But that was precisely what he would not do. The clan leaders who gathered in this place were a little scared after these words. One of them couldn't even finish his sentence. The only thing they ordered their people to do was to go on the attack and destroy these guys. Despite the fact that the numerical advantage was not on their side, Manhwa was the first to enter the battle. She desperately pressed back attack after attack. On the other side, the bearded man dealt with opponents who tried to harm him. When one of the opponents almost caused damage to the bearded man, the girl immediately intervened and repelled the attack. The bearded man thanked her. The girl told him not to go far from her if he didn't want to die. She caught herself thinking that she was still worried about Wukong, despite the fact that she knew his capabilities. She understood that the advertising executives would release a large amount of internal energy towards him, and it's not so easy to dodge such a quantity of internal energy, and controlling it was not an option. In addition, there were 4 strong opponents fighting against them, and she did not understand how Wukong could deal with them. But her worries were unfounded. The guy knew what he was doing, and he was a great master. That is why when one of the opponents tried to strike him, Wukong was able to move to the side. He easily dodged this blow so that the blow did not cause any damage to him. After one blow, several more followed, but the guy seemed to have foreseen each of these blows and dodged them. From the outside, it seemed that none of the 4 strong opponents were able to achieve their goal and strike Wukong. One of the opponents would be perplexed. He did not understand how this guy could block sword strikes with his bare hands. Did he really have a diamond body? At that moment, Wukong answered them that he would of course be happy to play with them longer, but he had other plans, and his 4 opponents stopped and looked at him without taking their eyes off him, waiting for what would happen next. The guy took a few steps and said that he was ready to finish this, getting ready to strike. One of the strict nicknames, but he is an arrogant brat from the meter. He probably does not understand who he is dealing with. It was the same clan leader who shouted at the guy that he was a bastard who turned Chonghyup into ruins. Wukong then answered him because he had already told him that he would be first in line. The head of the clan, who was completely confident in his strength and considered himself one of the strongest, was ready to destroy this impudent guy. But he didn't have a single son, because Wukong at that very moment dealt him a powerful blow that destroyed him. This Dubna was so powerful that it seemed he was made not by one fist but by many fists all over his body. After he had thrown away this clan leader, he began to attack the others with the same blows. The guy was so fast and struck so quickly that everyone else didn't even have time to react. He jumped up at one of his opponents to deliver another fatal kick. After this kick to the head, his opponent is completely destroyed and thrown to the side. His opponent fell to the ground. The young man at that moment realized that there was someone else he had to destroy. His opponents, who were immobilized and lying on the ground, understood that this was the end. When he struck the last of the 4 strongest, all threw him back with a blow he didn't even resist. The rest of the warriors stopped because they had never seen anything like this in their lives. The girl thought that Wukong's martial art had already manifested itself at the moment of capturing the bloody ghost, but she didn't think that he was so strong. She understood that with such power it would be better for them to remain allies, and of course it would be better for him to remain as a guest. The most important thing is that she understood that it was better to continue cooperation with him. At that moment, the young man thought that he could easily kill them all, but he didn't. He also thought that wasn't this a manifestation of the Buddha's mercy, that he told his opponents that they should spend their lives eating food from the temple and offering incense during prayer, after which he asked them again if they understood everything and was waiting for an answer. At that moment, he saw how the soul was leaving one of his opponents. He said that he was dying, and the soul was leaving him. Wukong at that moment told him to get up. He can't just die like that, he told him. At that moment, all the other warriors who were nearby threw their swords to the ground. They did not want to fight anymore. Under pressure from the dark forces, Anhui province was defeated. Wukong at that moment was shouting for his opponent not to die. He has no right to die just like that. He said that he was following the path and wanted to avoid irreconcilable murders only if it was not a truly evil creature. He demanded that he wake up. When the head of the clan took a deep breath, the guy was happy. He said that he saved him. The clan leader told the guy what the hell he had done. Wukong told him that he could have just said thank you. At that moment, the clan head looked at the young man who stood in front of him, and the bearded man who began to introduce himself very loudly thought that he had started the same thing again. Therefore, the bearded man immediately began to shout to him that he was truly a great sage equal to the heavens, and his name was Sun Wukong. The bearded man thought that he did it on purpose and that he would not have to hear it from him again. After which the guy turned around and looked at his assistants and said that the rest is on them. And he will go to the building that stood right in front of which was burning. He went. At the same time, he said that we can't let the weaklings from the Alliance die like this. Walking further, he saw a huge guy with the same huge ball who was fighting with the head of the Blue Alliance. And this guy was so strong that he pushed away everyone who even slightly approached him. The head of the Blue Alliance did not know what to do and what to do next with this guy. Yes, she said that at that moment his fate was sealed and his opponent mentally cut him off. And this huge guy with the same huge strength and the ability to swing to deliver a fatal blow, when his sword almost cut off the head of one of the warriors and was near the head of the leader of the alliance. The tone of evolution could be seen smiling. It seemed like some kind of trace from the past. Despite the fact that he was alone, he was able to destroy everyone who even came close to him. None of the opponents except the head of the Blue Alliance could resist him. The guy, when he saw this, he thought that he had not participated in the Great Orthodox War. There were some servants that he knew. Strong body, huge sword, and his name, Honamdo. He was one of the high-ranking members of the alliance. This warrior said that the enemy cannot be fought. His minutes are numbered. The head of the alliance understood that he could not defeat this enemy, but he could not give up so abruptly without a fight. How can he, the head of the alliance, leave those who died and gave their lives to protect Cheonghep? That's why he resisted. And he decided that at this moment, he would give what he could in this fight. Namely, he would give all his strength without reserve. This was the only thing he could do for his alliance. That's why he got ready and decided to attack first. He understood that even if he didn't defeat your opponent, he would gain time. The head of the Blue Alliance clearly understood that this could be his last battle. After all, his opponent was much stronger and had much more power than him. He was not going to give up. The Blue Alliance clan chief tried his best to resist his rival. Despite the fact that his opponent dealt quite powerful blows, the head of the Blue Alliance clan did not give in. The head of the clan understood that if not him, then no one else would be able to protect his alliance. But his opponent, despite this, dealt one blow after another. The head of the alliance dodged these blows. At some point, the head of the alliance realized that he had very little strength left, and he would not be able to resist any longer. When he tried to take a break, he opened his eyes and saw that the enemy's sword was very close, and a little more, and he would get it. His opponent swung his arm to deliver the final, devastating blow with all his might. But at some point, he didn't understand what happened and what it was. The voice that was very close said, "Does he not understand that it could be his huge sword crumbled in half?" Wukong at that moment said that the main character arrived to save those who need help and did not allow this final blow to be made. She said that the guy who didn't have any weapons in his hands was able to stop this attack so easily. The man realized that the clan leader had passed out at some point, but he also knew that he had fought long and well, and that the big guy tried to strike again. Well, what a disappointment it was when instead of hurting this guy, he got hit back. His opponent was very surprised because he didn't think that there was anyone else who could be stronger than him. Wukong then said, "Show me all the deeds lying on the ground, that all these people are dying. That is their fate. They died as it was written in the book of life and death." But after the brutal massacre, does he feel better taking such a burden on his soul? The thug asked him again who he was. The guy answered that he just had to think about it, because he was the one who had the meteorite for iron that he had been trying so hard to find. The guy asked him one more thing, whether he was a colleague of the Bloody Ghost or his boss. Then the thug realized that it was this guy who killed him. Wukong, his demands to give meteorite iron, said that he cannot because he is close to finding its true owner. And he also added that his opponent, oddly enough, seems to be a person, but he's not sure about it. There was such an ominous energy about him, and he was really a reincarnation of a monster. Although just looking at him, one could tell that this was indeed true somewhere. These words really hurt his opponent. He couldn't hold back, and at that moment he pounced on the guy and started attacking him. I tried to hit him at least once, but he couldn't do anything because Wukong dodged every blow. Wukong Weather Mamin said that this could not go on for so long, so he swung his arm to strike himself. And all these stumps with legs and fists, blocks and counterattacks, all this looks like a game. That is why he decided to resolve this issue radically and deal one specific blow to his opponent. After he delivered that blow, he felt like he was back in time. It seemed to him that this was the very time when he was furiously under the sky, and he had relief. After his opponent tried to strike again, he struck back, and he thought it was very funny. He struck back at his opponent in such a way that he lifted him in the air and twisted him several times. At this moment, his opponent concentrated and also tried to hit him, throwing him aside. Keikunmal is happy, Kim. What happened? He was really having fun. He thought that the bloody ghost in iron armor and this guy were both the devil's reincarnation. His opponent didn't want to give up, so he swung and delivered another powerful blow with his sword. He penetrated and looked at the guy. He couldn't even imagine that he would have so much strength and that he would be able to resist him. Well, at that moment, as soon as he thought, Wukong struck him back with great force with his foot on the head. The guy thought he had some kind of premonition about everything that was happening at that moment. It was now clear to him that it was impossible to pull this off alone, and that there was someone who was in charge of all this. And this man is much stronger than these two, and he is much taller than both of them. Wukong wondered if it was really them, and if it was Natasha Aika who stole his teacher's soul. Everyone around understood only one thing, that in such a short moment, two strong energies crossed the spaces and exchanged dozens of blows. And then Wukong clearly saw something that he had not noticed until that moment. It was not fate that connected them, and it clearly went from his opponent to him. The guy caught himself thinking that he had an unconscious feeling of disgust, and it was caused by this villainous connection. And he also understood that he had hatred, disgust, hostility, and Wukong allowed these emotions to flow over the edge. He did all this only because sometimes the sky releases even greater power. As was said earlier, each person becomes the master of the situation only by completely controlling his emotions. Wukong was pleased with what was happening on the field at the moment. He found a worthy opponent. That's why he dealt several blows to his opponent. It seemed that he would not be able to stand and fall. The guy's arm hurt after the blows he received. He didn't understand whether his opponent had a stone head. But their fight continued. The guy himself was sometimes on the left, sometimes on the right. He moved very quickly in a zigzag and then made a horizontal swing. He was a little bored. His opponent swung again. He wanted Wukong to shut up already and insisted that he start fighting. Wukong, when his opponent tried to strike, said, "Why fight to the death? It's better to have a little fun and dodge the blow." Wukong, since his opponent insisted that he start fighting, he dealt his opponent several blows. His opponent stopped because the blows were really strong for what Yaokun. What will be the continuation now? His opponent didn't know which side to defend himself from, which side this guy would attack him from. The very next moment, Wukong struck the other side even harder, so that his opponent did not expect it. The opponent grabbed his head. The blow was so strong that he almost fell. The guy just laughed, after which he asked his opponent if he was really from an orthodox sect. He found it very funny because he really was falling for a childish trick. The guy realized that he was too annoying and apologized for being rude at the beginning of their acquaintance. Then he said that he was shutting up and fighting. When his opponent heard about this, he was very surprised. Was it really just a game before? He didn't understand him. He suddenly started attacking him. His speed and strength increased several times, at least 3 times. Kei-kun was very close in an instant and delivered a powerful blow straight to his opponent's life. The huge enemy could not stay on his feet. He stumbled and fell. He didn't understand how this happened to him, because he had strengthened his defensive energy and still missed several of these blows. In fact, the outcome of the battle was predetermined from the very beginning, and he could not defeat it. Immediately after one blow, the guy began to attack further and dealt several more blows to his opponent. The enemy, who some time ago refused to be menacing and huge as a rock, fell to the ground. Wukong stood after this attack and watched his opponent to see how he would behave next. His opponent began to rise with the last of his strength, leaning on his huge sword. Wukong then said that just look, he acts the same as the bloody ghost. It seemed like he was trying to release all his power at once. Despite the fact that his opponent was hit so hard, he was able to concentrate and get up. The guy thought that his energy bullet covered the entire area where they were located. With the energy center open to such an extent, he will be able to see his soul. The first thing I noticed was his forehead gaze. He was wondering what he was like in his past life. The guy also noticed that these protruding ones and nothing most beard nauseatingly pleased look. Wukong understood that most likely this monster was one of those who killed his brothers, and also robbed and enslaved them until he left the mountain for a while. This was his true enemy. The only thing that came to his mind at that moment was that it was most likely the Demon King. Wukong thought that his true nature awakened after meeting an opponent worth fighting after hundreds of years. But there was another reason. His unconscious disgust and rage that he felt during this fight. At some point, the guy even thought that he was just a monster, and he was very lucky that he didn't catch it. His armor at that moment swung to deliver another blow. The guy raised his hand and stopped the huge sword and said that his hand was made of diamond. His opponent couldn't do the slightest damage to him despite his attempts. At that moment, for the first time in his life, he felt something he had not felt for a very long time, namely, rage and anger, with which he was ready to destroy his opponent for being a monster. At that moment, he remembered how it all happened in the past, and how these monsters destroyed his brothers. At that moment, he decided that he had to tear apart every piece of his enemy with his own hands, that it was only because he was the one who destroyed his brothers that he could avenge them. It was the first time he felt such a strong fury covering him from head to toe. At that moment, Wukong dealt his opponent a powerful blow to the head and threw him back. The first Dimka he killed was Havoc. Everything was the same as in his past life. After which, he punched your opponent's body a few more times to break him into pieces. So many years have passed since then, but the pain after the death of all his brothers still remains with him. It did not fade away at all, and either the main force flared up at the moment when he saw this enemy in front of him. He didn't understand how it could be forgotten, so he decided that he had to avenge his brothers and tear him to pieces. There was terrible fear on his face. He didn't understand what was happening and how this was possible. Wukong stopped. He continued to carry him blow after blow, throwing him aside to the ground. Despite the rain and the enemy falling to the ground, the guy stops and hits him again. Jan himself said that his inability to hide emotions is one of his best qualities, but he must always remember that he should not allow his heart to take over his mind and body. That is what this moment will be about. But despite these memories and the words of your teacher, he decided to deliver the final blow. After he hit, it seemed like everything around him was shattered into small pieces and destroyed. At that moment, clenching his fist, he thought that he was born in the harmony of heaven and earth. He considered himself to be an almost perfect being, so he decided that the table should do just that. Wukong thought that he would not throw off who could be affected by the anger that was taking over his soul. The guy stood there for a while and looked at his not very big fist, thinking about all this. Then he unclenched his fist and looked at his palm. At that moment, he thought that the name had come to him. He came up with a name for this spiritual power with which he was able to defeat this enemy. He decided to call it the Demon Slayer. The guy thought that this is what his martial art would be called, the art of destroying demons. Wukong stood for some time near the head of his opponent, who lay lifeless on the ground. He understood that everyone around him was looking only at him and the powers he possessed. The first person he looked at was the bearded man and the girl who also couldn't take her eyes off him. Wukong said that this bastard is targeting the Blue Alliance faction, and he believes that he is the leader of the Dark Path criminal group. When the girl came closer, she said that it was Kanamdo. The guy asked again if it was really some famous villain. They answered that his bad reputation was legendary, but his energy centers were destroyed at the moment. The body was literally shattered. It was surprising that he was still breathing in such a state. Wukong said that there is no need to worry because they did not try to deceive the Blue Alliance faction into stealing the business rights. On the contrary, they saved him from a scoundrel who almost destroyed the entire clan along with his head. Changheap, after he visited here, is now in ruins. If they want to recover, they will have to give up all their privileges to the Namgung family. This is the question about assistance in transferring the rights to the Yangha Forge, which the Namgung family addressed. Wukong noticed that this issue could be considered successfully resolved, after which he turned around and began to leave. In just one day, everything in Anhui province was turned upside down. The Cheonhep clan, which considered itself the second or third strongest, collapsed. The rumor spread like wildfire and truly shocked everyone. The shocking chain of events that led to the collapse. Honamdo, who would have thought that the former head of Samarin would appear? People said that he united all the factions of the Dark Path and destroyed the Blue Alliance. They also discussed that the Namgun family left once again, leaving these bastards from Samarin with nothing, who said that he heard that it was their guest. And didn't they discuss if he was so strong that he could defeat Hongdo, and everyone called him the Golden Prince? While rumors about Sun Wukong were slowly spreading, Namgung's family was busy with the process of obtaining the business rights of the Blue Alliance faction. The collapsed Blue Alliance faction had no choice but to turn to the Namgung family. They could not afford for their numerous trading rights to fall into the hands of the evil cult. In a world where power grabs are commonplace, the Namgung clan decided to take the path they offered the Blue Alliance faction to buy out its trading rights for a fair price. Having made a deal with another righteous sect that they saved from the monster of a high-ranking figure of Samarin, the Namgun family itself laid the foundation for an alliance again. This is how the image of the Namgung family, previously considered more cruel than the evil sects and more merciless than the dark factions, began to change. Their lost name regained respect, and everything that happened to them is the merit of Sun Wukong. who had been lying in the clearing for some time and thinking about what wonderful weather it was. At that moment, someone slowly approached him and asked if he had relaxed too early. The guy said that he didn't expect that she would have time to visit the master. Sonvitya is always busy. The girl came to him to ask him a few questions because she wanted to know the appearance of Hanam-do. He expected it. Wukong lay quietly in the clearing, closed his eyes. It seemed that he fell asleep at some point. The guy answered her that he doesn't look like a fortune teller at all and doesn't know how to predict the future. It's just luck. The girl answered that Hanam-do doesn't give up on his attempts and demands that they bring Master Sun. She wanted to find out from a young man she didn't know why he was demanding. The guy stood up, looked at her, and said that he had a personal dislike for this guy. She didn't understand what he was talking about. She thought that the world of martial arts is full of hostility and countless debts. Apparently, there is some kind of story hidden here. The young man said that he would visit him later. The girl agreed, after which she turned around and slowly left. Wukong sat there for a while and thought about what had happened. He needed to make a decision. After some time, he went down to the dungeon of the Namong clan as she asked him to do. When he was there, he asked his opponent what he wanted to tell him. Then Hanam-do told him that he also had this aroma. This is a primordial, all-consuming feeling that is impossible to resist. The guy did not understand what this aroma was, and this feeling that Akai experience when meeting a stronger relative. Then the guy asked again if he had already encountered someone like him, and who the hell are they anyway? Hanam-do answered if he is not the same as them. The guy then told him that it sounded pretty insulting, but Hanam-do asked him what he thought about joining them. And then he continued that their leader is building a new world, and his power can change a lot in it. After all, he is the same as them. So why is he on the side of the enemy? Wukong listened to him to the end, said that he speaks as a phonetic sectarian. He said that they are those who are people, but at the same time no, they are endowed with inhuman strength and unlimited potential. After such a confession, Hanam-do said that they call themselves Jam Inami. The guy thought that even if they don't fully realize that they were Akai in their past life, they have some sense of it. At some point, he came to the realization that all this meant that someone could see into past lives and gradually make them remember. Most likely, it must be their leader. The guy thought that he needs to meet with their leader, only then he can decide whether to take their side. He said that only because he decided to try to find out something. Hanam-do replied that their leader was a busy man, a respected person, who was impossible to meet even if you really wanted to, but he could introduce him to someone. The guy wondered what it meant to someone. Then Hanam-do answered that to the one who had repeatedly met with their leader, and this person. He told him everything in great detail and what kind of person he might meet. Wukong thought about it. He explained in detail where and how he could meet this someone. Did he really think that he would take the bait? Wukong then asked him if he was making this offer because he hoped that he would sit for the rest of his life. Hanam-do replied that the energy center had been destroyed and that he could not freely use martial arts. Escaping from the dungeon is simply impossible. What is he afraid of if he sacrifices himself for a great goal? Wukong listened to him to the end, and then he said that he usually prefers not to kill, partly because of his mastery, and partly because he himself was once a Buddha. But at the same time, he is a being that judges and punishes with evil, just like the bloody iron ghost. At that moment, he swung to strike. Their souls were filled with so many devilish sins that they had no right to life, and the sacrifice for a great purpose was funny. These two couldn't even atone for their sins in hell. He decided that he had to kill him right here and now, so he told him to die like a dog and destroyed him with his own hands. After some time, voices were heard in the Namong clan meeting hall. The elder said that they had not yet recovered from the horror of the war between the righteous and demonic forces. And at this moment, Hanam-do appears one of the leaders of Samaren. This is actually an attack on the righteous factions. Someone thought that this was a conspiracy of the remnants of Samaren. It was clear that the war between righteousness and evil was not yet over, and if they act through dark sects, then it would not be wiser to first destroy these very factions. Some people thought that they shouldn't make hasty decisions. Maybe he acted alone and they should find out everything, even if it required torture. At that moment, one of the Namong family came in and said that Hanam-do had just been killed by Master Sun Wukong. One of the elders said that of course it was the master who captured him, but killing a prisoner in the clan's dungeons was too much. Another believed that this could definitely cause complications. The situation became even more difficult. When the girl saw Wukong, she asked why he killed him. The guy answered her that he deserved to die for destroying his entire family. She thought that seeing the master always smiling with such an expression on his face was strangely similar to her. He also had a personal score to settle with Samarin. She thought that revenge was the highest form of justice in the world of martial arts. Nothing pushed a warrior to the sword more strongly. There was no need to call him to account yet. When it comes to destroying the remnants of Samarin, the goals of the Namong clan and Sun Wukong completely coincided. Despite everything, the girl came up to him and said that he did absolutely the right thing. He was a little surprised. She said that he too would not be able to restrain himself. Samarin took away her family and by killing Kanamzo, saved someone's life. He looked at her and thought that this conversation reminded him of something and that he had heard it somewhere. When his teacher said that he would not be able to hold back his anger if he were in his place after what they did to his family, how could they be spared? And he did this mercy with Pasha to save others from suffering. He looked at her and understood that she was speaking in the same words, but she was not a Buddha. The girl said that it is not necessary to always act like saints. He could not even imagine that she would react like that. He was very surprised by the behavior of Master Mu Hua from the law enforcement hall. Could it really be her words? Wukong was walking in the clearing. He was waiting for a white owlet to fly up to him. When the owl flew closer, he said that he did everything as he was told. Wukong visited a woman named Mu Hua. The owl told him that apart from the fact that she was incredibly strong, he didn't notice anything special. Unlike So Daesong, he wasn't gifted with the ability to see the embodiment of the past. Wukong understood everything. He just wanted to make sure that Mu Hua was a merciless warrior reincarnation. Sam John somehow didn't believe it, although fate is a strange thing. To see her past with golden vision, one must first break through the mental barrier in her upper dantian. In other words, they need to get closer to her. Wukong asked the owl he is quite strong. He received the answer at least within his territory. He is a mountain spirit. Then they asked him to stay close to the girl if she really is the incarnation of Sam Jan. Something will definitely happen no matter how exalted the soul is. If it is separated from the body for too long, it will eventually collapse. He said that in case of emergency, immediately intervene and report to him. The owl said to put on him the great sage. The guy thought that this owl was quite useful. Even the capture of the enemy this time was largely due to his merits. A few days before receiving a request for cooperation from the Namong clan, when it was late evening, the young man went to the mountain spirit to meet him. The mountain spirit asked why he came to him again because he was going to eat him. The guy replied that this time the glass, when the spiritual energy raged like a storm, something happened there. The mountain spirit said that he doesn't remember anything at all. Then the guy said not to worry, he will make him remember. The mountain spirit then said that he vaguely remembers how the spiritual energy burst out. But after that, all the memories completely disappeared, as if they had been cut out completely. The guy understood that he was not lying, which meant that someone had to seal his memories. Someone strong enough to erase the memory of the mountain god himself. Then the guy told him not to listen carefully if he found someone in Anhui province with unusually great strength. Then he should immediately send him to the Namong clan estate and report. The mountain spirit did not understand why he should do this. But when he got hit on the head several times, he immediately understood and followed the guy. After some time, mountain oaks in the province were observing a large number of people. It was he who noticed two people who hid their faces with huge hoods stuffed to the top of their heads. The mountain spirit noticed these two because they were distant from all other people. After which the mountain spirit flew to the young man and told him about the two he saw. While they were pondering how to get rid of the two suspicious types, Namgung's family approached them with a request to help regain control of the forge. If these two are related to the bloody ghost in the armor, they will not be able to ignore the appearance of the fragment of the seven-star sword. Taking advantage of this, he came up with a cunning plan. The first thing he decided to do was to capture the Chonhep clan and at the same time lure out the suspects. But in the end, they missed one of them. The young man asked the mountain spirit if he remembered the guy who ran away from the province. And most importantly, he remembered what he looked like. He had to follow him. When talking to his new bearded friend, he said that he doesn't care about any trifles. And all the conversations that are going on are childish fun that is not worth his attention. He then added that the scenery here is truly magnificent. The food and wine are also excellent. And it seems that Slava's product offering of 10,000 dishes and a wide range of drinks is fully justified. Hwangbo Yon of the Hwangbo clan said that he heard that the Namgung clan saved the Cheonhyup family this time and was even able to absorb the business rights. His interlocutor replied that it was time to return to the roots, time to get up and act. It was Namgun Muen from the Namgun clan. Another representative of the Namgun Sowal clan sat at the table and thought this isn't a sword fight. These drinking sessions are complete crap. The Habukpyeong clan, its representative Pon Chokon, said that since the purpose of this event is to establish connections, it would be appropriate to stay a little longer. And by the way, is there any information about the guest of the Namgung family? The girl sitting opposite asked again. He means about the Golden Prince. They say he has golden hair and eyes and that he is incredibly handsome. It was Soso from the Ziegel clan. When a young man entered the warehouse, the girl turned her head and said that he really had golden hair, which meant that it seemed like the rumors weren't lying. When Kun came in, absolutely everyone froze and looked in his direction because everyone wanted to see the Golden Prince. After all, this was the very person that everyone discussed the most, and everyone only talked about him. The girl noticed that even they were not allowed to enter that mansion because someone very important was staying there, which meant it was clear that a guest of the family was using it. When Wukong entered the room, he asked his interlocutor if he could see. He answered that yes, he could see. Despite the fact that he only had one eye, it was the head of Ho Gajong. The chief thought that now he understands what situation he found himself in, and now he is forced to bow his head before these guys. This man asked the Namgung clan if he wanted to use it to control the Black Dao because it was almost destroyed. Only a few remained. The guy said that it was necessary to clarify. He spared him. Wukong then asked the head how he met Hanam, though his interlocutor answered that he went to the place where the Black Dao gathered. Then the guy asked if Hanam Do was alone, he would definitely fight and lose. But there was someone else with him. Then his interlocutor replied that the old man had accompanied him, and it seemed that Hanam Do had obeyed him unquestioningly. Then the guy asked again if this old man really had a mole next to his nose. The head was surprised and said if he really already knew everything. The chapter said that the old man waved his hand, and 12 people lost their heads at that moment. All the Black Dao surrendered, and people like them react very sensitively to the threat of death. Then he added that, to be honest, he did not feel any threat from the guy, and he thought that some clone decided to show off. Kun was deeply hurt by these words. He told the head that he had now decided to be familiar with him. Then the head said that he thought he had lived at least twice as long as him. Kun answered him that he lived longer than his great-grandfathers. When his interlocutor heard about this, he was a little scared because he did not understand who he was dealing with and how dangerous he was. So he immediately bowed and said that he apologized with all his heart and that he should forgive his rudeness. The guy understood that his interlocutor was well versed in the situation. They reacted quickly. All this was to his liking. The old man wanted to know what the guy wanted from him. He started to speak, and so the reason why he was able to live to his age must be in his intelligence. He has a lot to find out in the province of Anhui. He needed cooperation. In order to find Sam Jan's soul, he needed a lot of information. In other words, he is a master who is going to take control of the Ho family of the Black Dao. He decided that the first thing the monasteries do is to gain control over the informants. The old man did not understand that he was not on the same side as the Namgun clan. Then he answered, "Even if on neither side he does not belong to the Namgun family, he is just their guest. He does not look like a lackey." The old man said, "If here helps him to regain his lost power, then he will fulfill any of his wishes." At that moment, they heard many steps, and it sounded like some kind of dance. The door to the room suddenly opened, and a young man stood on the threshold, telling his father that he had heard him publicly declare that he was not going to hand over the Ho clan to him. His son was so overexcited that he started shouting that this is why he went to take power from him himself. The old man took a step forward and asked his son how he got into this room because no one knew he was here. Wukong told the bearded man that he had dealt with it quickly. The bearded man responded as planned. When they said that the clan master was up to something, they followed them without any suspicion. The old man got angry and started yelling at the guy. Didn't he say that he would help him? Wukong replied that that was exactly why he called them. The old man didn't understand what it was. Then the guy said that he was just watching. He was making sure that he didn't have to be ashamed of his age. The most shameful thing in such a situation was a head without a family. You can trust him and fight to the end. The old man turned and looked at the young man and what he had just told him. He thought that it was he who beat him half to death, and now he is telling him to go and fight. It is unclear where he came from, but he is definitely worse than the guys from the Black Dao. The boy said why shouldn't he direct his determination to deal with this ungrateful boy trying to take power away from his elder? The old man, when he remembered everything he had seen, thought that it would be better to fight with his own son than to deal with this guy. At some point he stopped and thought that, after all, blood is not water and he cannot just kill his son. He thought that only a few days had passed since he had taken refuge in the resentment of 1,000 aromas, and he had already gathered so many comrades. The old man said that his son is a brat. He lives with wide-open red eyes, and how dare he contradict his father? His son, after his father's words, took out his sword and threw it in his direction, but it missed and swung back. Father said that there is a saying that has been passed down from time immemorial among martial artists and people from dark sects. The old man said if he does nothing after being hit by a flying sword, he is just a loser. It was clear that he wants to defeat him right in front of everyone. His son turned to him and told him to allow him to accompany them to a worthy place, as he needed to rest and improve his health. The old man took out this sword and said that he was the head of the clan, even before he learned to crawl, and it was time to return the Huo family's lost authority in the Black Dao. The old man understood that his son chose the very moment when he was weakened to attack him. His son fundamentally disagreed with him because his father attacked Chonghep and was defeated. And after that, he begs Namgung's family to spare his life. Does he really think he has any authority? In the Battle of the Black Dao, it is not only skill that decides what is important here. Cruelty, cunning, and fearlessness. In other words, the one who has enough spirit wins. And in this regard, the son clearly surpassed his father, while the seriously wounded head of the clan could hardly stand on his feet. But despite all this, the old man believed that his son was a scoundrel and no one dared to act like that. Wukong, who was behind, told the old man that he was doing everything wrong. It was transmitted so that no one could hear. Then the guy told the old man to take a step to the left, and then a chopping blow from top to bottom to the body. The old man was very surprised about this telepathic connection that he possessed, but he had no choice but to repeat the actions that the guy told him. He took a step to the left, and after this step to the left, he made a blow with his saber from top to bottom, directly aimed at his son. The blow was really strong, but at the last moment his son put up a defense and blocked the blow. Wukong told the old man to step back, and then take a step forward, and then a step to the right. He had to do a diagonal strike with his fist, and then a block. He was unhappy with how he was moving and ordered him to take 2 steps back, and then a thrust. His son thought that he had studied martial arts with his father, so he knew all his moves, but that his movements had suddenly changed. He didn't understand whether he really had techniques that he didn't know and that he didn't pass on to him. Wukong told the old man to protect his right side, and he should turn around, then make 2 shark payments, then step to the left. He also hinted that the enemy was being attacked from above and snills from the right, and that the old man should block. At some point, the clan leader's entire body was seized by a tremor. The feeling he experienced for the first time in 60 years was overwhelming. He had the feeling that he was dancing with a sword, and at some point he even liked it all. And this inspiring feeling was clearly reflected on his face and in all his actions. The rest of the warriors froze and then opened their mouths. They thought that it was incredible the clan leader was still so strong. Even in such a critical condition, he is able to move like this. At that moment, the old man realized that this was the guy's promise that he was ready to help him. Then the young man answered him that everyone thought that he was just a sick and frail old man. But if he can defeat the young and ruthless howls of the Black Dao, then everyone will change their opinion of him. And at the same time, he will be able to retain the enormous power and also the enormous authority that he had before. Isn't such an unshakable figure the true image of a ruler at that moment? He laid the sword on the neck of his son. The old man stood looking down at his son, who was sitting in front of him on his knees with his head down. All the other warriors were waiting to see what would happen next, how he would decide the fate of his son. The old man thought about the guy that he had long ago realized that he was a real master with whom he could not compare. Moreover, he skillfully prepares the ground. And most importantly, he is very attentive to details. Seeing this, he should be feared even more than Hanamdo. The old man thought that at this moment it would be wiser to submit to his will. He did not finish off his son, showing that he was much stronger and he was able to cope with him. He turned around and went to the others. He ordered the rest of the warriors to follow him as they returned to the Ho clan's estate. His warriors answered him that they were ready. One of the bells approached the young master and asked him to stand up. The young master was furious. He thought that he was so close to victory, just a little more, and the Black Dao faction of Anhui province would be in his hands. He decided that he wouldn't let it end that easily, so he launched his sword towards his father. The sword was supposed to hit him in the back. At that moment, the old man suddenly turned his head and saw it, after which he blocked the blow and deflected the sword that his son launched. One of the warriors smiled and said that it was expected. Even at that moment, he was able to block the blow. The old man was hit by the sword and it flew in the opposite direction. It seemed that it would return to its owner in just a little while. Everyone froze in confusion as to where the sword would fly, because it could have hit anyone present. The soldiers also froze in bewilderment. One of them even said, "Look where he is flying." After all, this sword was directed towards one of those present and sitting at the table. When he flew up to him, the clan leader took out his sword and also blocked this blow and threw it aside. He also said that there is an old saying that has been passed down from time immemorial among martial arts masters and people from dark sects. If someone acts after being hit by a flying sword, then he is just a loser. At that moment, the girl sitting at the table turned to the head of the sect and asked if he was okay. The head of the sect stood up and told everyone that he was safe. Then there was silence in the tavern for a while. The old man wondered why the 5 great clans appeared at this moment. Normally, he would have simply bowed his head. But if he does this, he will lose the authority that he acquired with such difficulty. Everyone was waiting to see what he would do next. Sadik approached another clan leader. He needed to do something, but he didn't understand what exactly. Then another clan leader said that it was not appropriate to have family squabbles in front of guests. Although the concept of purity among martial artists has long been lost, swinging swords among ordinary people is unacceptable. The old man thought that as a warrior of the righteous path, he could stand aside, to which the head of the clan thought that he was going to accept the apology and show generosity, but instead of words of regret, there was silence. He also thought that since the old man was silent, it meant that he was treating him like a clown and was ready to fight him. What exactly did he do next moment? He pushed off, jumped up, and tried to attack the old man. At that moment, the old man thought that it looked like he couldn't avoid another fight. Well, what was the surprise of the clan leader when something happened that he definitely did not expect? He looked and thought that this couldn't be, that someone's hand could just grab his sword. Wukong intervened in their showdown and decided to stop this fight before it started. The blade of one of the 5 great clans of the Huangbo family was stopped with bare hands. Everyone who was present at this power of attorney, and not just surprised, they were shocked by what they saw. The only thing they understood was that this person was beyond their capabilities, so they shouldn't get involved with him. Wukong looked at his opponent and said, "Maybe we can talk first and then swing the sword." Wukong said that as a guest of the Namong clan, he was entrusted with an important task, and this person was also involved in the matter, so he cannot let him die, and he is willing to apologize for him. The head of the clan thought only about one thing, his sword, which was so easily stopped with bare hands. That's why he said that even though he was a guest of the Namong family, he probably shouldn't interfere in their affairs. Despite the incident that happened, he understands everything. He thought of only one thing, that he could not free his sword. Bitches go clan swords, one eccentric other. Wukong put his sword aside, and the clan leader thought that a truly outstanding person had settled in their house. At this moment, everyone began to greet the guest of the Namong family. Everyone wanted to say hello to him. The first guy came out. He said that he was Namong Muon, the eldest son of the Namong house. When Wukong saw him, for some reason he was confused and couldn't take his eyes off him, after which he grabbed his head and took several deep breaths and then exhaled. Nobody understood what was happening to him and why he was behaving like that, because the guy had just introduced himself. Wukong didn't say anything, turned around and went to the exit. It seemed that he felt very bad. That same evening, the lights were on at the Yonwan Inn for a long time as everyone discussed what was happening. The girl taking a bath said that they called it just a friendly meeting, but in reality, it was some kind of absurdity. She was immersed in a hot bath and thought that it was nothing but a headache. She believed that the worst thing was that the Namong clan was going to use the Dragon and Phoenix gathering to unite the 5 great houses and reassert their leadership. Long before this meeting, Namgung Muyeon and Namgung Sowal had already made a name for themselves in the martial arts world by destroying the remnants of the Sameryong faction and other scum. It seems that this was a pre-arranged demonstration of what a bright future awaits the Namgung family. At the same time, after the Great War, the Huangbo clan gained strength, and according to rumors, now he was claiming leadership among the 5 great clans. The question was being decided whether the Zhigal clan should enter into an alliance with one of these families. Behind the facade of a friendly meeting, this gathering is nothing more than an arena for dirty political struggle. She thought that she was so tired of it all. On the other hand, at least she became friends with the cutie Sovol, which at least made her a little happy. She was so sincere, and she was only interested in sword fights. Eve thought that she was very sorry that she first ended up in the Namgung family, but nothing could be done about it. Late in the evening at the Namgung clan, Wukong decided that he needed to relax and think alone in the gazebo. He sat absolutely alone, drinking drinks and looking at the grandson who was shining directly on him. He wanted to complete the task that was assigned to him as quickly as possible and return home. At that moment, he heard someone's voice saying that something seemed to be bothering him. He didn't understand who was talking to him. Lowering his head down, he saw a small kitten. In Kun's body, this little kitten had the golden star of Mount Taebaek, and it was Master Changen. They hadn't seen each other for a long time. The guy thought it was a golden star from the mountain, and he was one of his greatest benefactors, a man who had helped him more than once in the most difficult times. He is the one he can rightfully call a true friend. This happened when he caused a stir in the heavenly abode. All the gods there demanded that he be executed, but the wisest and most magnanimous elder of heaven, Master Changen, came up with a proposal. Good to me, atonement, and endow with an official position. Since then, he is immensely grateful to the Master. The Master said that he descended into this world because he must tell him something important. The Master said that because of him there was great turmoil in the heavenly realms. He did not understand why, because he lived peacefully among mortals. Then the Master said that King Yama had filed an official complaint against him to the Jade Emperor. The guy didn't understand whether it was really the king's lie, whether it was serious, on what grounds the Master said, whether it wasn't he who destroyed 2 souls, and once again reminded him how he destroyed those 2 souls that he erased. The guy said that these were souls that were destined to burn in hell forever. They were reincarnated in human form and began to commit evil again. How could he, the true Buddha, the fighting monk, just sit back? He was reminded that the passing of judgment on the souls of the right judge of the underworld is precisely why this became a problem. The Master thought that such unshakable confidence in his actions, not a drop of doubt as expected, was quite in his spirit. The guy told the Master to tell the Great Lord to take better care of his things. The fragments of his 7-star sword are now wandering around the mortal world. He said that the Supreme Ruler allowed the promo, well, he will convey these words to him. After which he said goodbye to him. He stood next to him for a while, looking at him with his huge cat eyes. After which his eyes became less bright, and he could no longer speak. He meowed like a little kitten. Alas, according to the laws dividing heaven and the mortal world, even such a great master is forced to speak through the mouth of a cat. Wukong is very upset. He thought that everything is not going as he wanted. He thought that he would get some help, but here it is not at all like that. The kitten jumped back and hid in the young man's robe, and he asked what it was this time. The kitten was twice as scared as the representatives from the Namgun family came to Wukong. Wukong caught himself thinking once again that he was seeing them again, and felt his head spinning. Everything is the same as last time. This feeling was inexplicable, and why did he feel like this when he brought them? The eldest son turned to the great warrior Wukong and told him to simply call him Master Song. Then the boy said that he actually came to express his gratitude. He continued to talk about how he heard that the Master had settled things with the Blue Alliance faction, the bloody ghost in armor, and even with Hanam-do. The guy didn't understand if they sent the heir just to say thank you after Wukong's gratitude. He expected that another request would follow. On the middle, he said that he swears that he was not going to put pressure on the Master or impose anything on him. At that moment, Wukong felt that he could not breathe. First, Manhwa, then the head of the sect. And now he sees this very thread of fate connecting these 2 together with him. He thought that the barrier to consciousness in order to awaken memories of past incarnations is necessary to get closer to these 2. He didn't understand because they were just children and how they could find a common language with them. The guy saw a small kitten. Wukong thought and asked them to start saying what they want specifically, because they didn't just come here for no reason. The guy started explaining that Namgung's family was holding a Yonbong meeting and whether he could attend as an observer. The young man thought that they needed someone who would monitor the other clans from the outside. Wukong said that it seemed like the conversation was dragging on. The heir suggested going inside to make tea. The youngest heir of the family could not take her eyes off the little kitten that was sitting next to Wukong. The heiress suddenly thought about the bloody ghosts in armor and all the others that their guest had defeated. She also dreamed of fighting them. The girl asked the master because she was very curious how he was able to defeat them all. She wanted to clarify whether it was a duel or something else. Her older brother said that she remained silent. Then she said that she was ready to arrange a sparring match and offered the guests to help her with this. Wukong thought that it was too small, but he didn't know what to do in this situation. Her older brother said that it is not possible to offer sparring so abruptly. The girl said that she wants to fight. They are cousins, but the sister was completely different. Perhaps one of them is a reincarnation of Yan himself. He thought that this was a good chance to get closer to him. Wukong said that light sparring in the middle of the night would not be overdone. The girl insisted on her own. The master pulled the kitten out, put it on the ground, and said that everything was fine. He would just play with the child a little. For her, it was not a game. She said that she would fight seriously because she believed that she had no right to lose. Now that he thinks about it, it was his first time when he didn't refuse and decided to fight, knowing in advance that he was stronger. He thought that she was a little thing, and the word battle looked much different to her. He thought that this was essentially entertainment. It was a chance for him to experience the Namgung family's technique on himself. Master said she dreamed of fighting the bloody ghost and also Hanamdo. The girl didn't understand what he was talking about, but the master told her to watch carefully, and he was wondering if she could handle it. He thought it was time to have some fun.